O'Reilly. Are your wiper blades chattering, skipping, or squeaking? Don't let streaks or smearing on your windshield compromise your visibility. When it's time to replace your wiper blades, stop by O'Reilly Auto Parts and see our selection. Our professional parts people will even install your new wiper blades while you wait. Stop by O'Reilly Auto Parts today. O'Reilly Auto Parts.
There's nothing like snook hook sets at dawn or catching a tarpon in the moonlight. Find your next fishing trip made easy on fishingbooker.com and experience the magic of the Sunshine State or any other destination on your fishing bucket list. Book a blue water adventure in search of sailfish or go snapper fishing with the kids. With over 6,000 captains and trips to choose from, planning your next one just got a whole lot easier. Download the Fishing Booker app on the Google Play or App Store, or visit them online at fishingbooker.com to book your trip today. Hey everybody, listen up. I got mega huge news. Meat Eater Live is heading back out on the road. That's right, join me and the crew. Clay Newcomb, Cal, Yanni, Spencer's going to be there. Phil the Engineer's going to be there. Meat Eater Live, headed back out. Now, when you get every ticket, okay? Every ticket you buy, you get a signed copy of our new Meat Eater Outdoor Cookbook. This tour is celebrating the release of the book. Buy a ticket, get a signed copy, Meat Eater Outdoor Cookbook, wild game recipes for the grill, smoker, camp stove, and campfire, which I'll point out is a $38 value. Here's where we're going to go. April 23rd, the Mesa Arts Center in Mesa, Arizona. April 24, the Balboa Theater in San Diego. April 25, the Grove in Anaheim, California. April 27, the Crest Theater in Sacramento. April 29, the Union in Salt Lake City. April 30, the Egyptian in Boise. May 1, the Wilma Theater in Missoula. May 2, the Bing Crosby Theater in Spokane, Washington. May 4, Revolution Hall in Portland, Oregon. And May 5, the last day of the tour, Pantages Theater in Tacoma, Washington. For tickets and more information, visit the events page at themeateater.com. Hope to see you at the show.
The Hunting Collective is presented by Element.
I guess I grew up on an older road.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of The Hunting Collective. I am Benjamin Patrick O'Brien. We made it all the way to episode 152, and I have COVID. Phil, we've not talked about this yet. Are you worried? What are you feeling right now?
I'm not particularly worried because I think you started feeling kind of ill a while ago, right? But things haven't gotten horrible, have they?
Yeah, they'd have been fun. Not horrible, like a bad flu, you know. I just figured my brush with Jolene might have caused some sort of illness.
Yeah. And her love muffin? What did she call it?
Her sex muffin. Her 75-year-old sex muffin from last episode. I figured that might have been the reason for the illness. But no, it turns out that Thursday I went in and they tested me and they said, you got the cocoa. You got the Rona. You better go quarantine it up. So I've been literally in the same bedroom in my house since Thursday night. And I don't even know what day is it. It could be any day, and there's no way for me to know.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah, and one thing I've learned is my wife said, how's your vacation in there? I said, there is a fine line between vacation and prison in this case. It's more like prison on day 5. So I don't know. Use me as always. Use me as a cautionary tale. Don't go to the Missouri Breaks. Try to hunt mule deer. You might get the cocoa. But in all seriousness, I've had some bad days, some good days, some relatively kind of uneasy times with it moving to my lungs a couple of days ago. So, it's not been fun. It's hard on the family. It's hard on everything. So, I'm not telling you anybody what to do, but just know my experience is this is not a virus to mess around with. It's not something to take lightly, and no matter what you might hear on the news, it shouldn't be politicized. You should just try to avoid it and try to avoid giving it to everybody else because I'm on day 9, not feeling great. So various levels of not feeling great. But I'm here to give you a podcast. And it's going to be a good one. Right, Phil?
I think that because you're in here, you've got COVID-19 and you're still determined enough to make a show. I think it's going to be a good one.
Yeah. I feel, this is a good time to actually cry for sympathy and virtue signal and see what I can get out of this deal. Other than the many vitamins my wife is shoving under the door. The crack in the door about every 20 minutes. So yeah, whatever I can get from the sympathy, please, cards, flowers, donations to some sort of. Should we set up some sort of like GoFundMe account?
I think just put your personal Venmo account up. Don't tell anyone where the money is going to end up going, because it doesn't matter. It's just Venmo Ben O'Brien, whatever you can give him. I'm sure he'll spend the money wisely.
Don't worry. Like that when I'm in Tijuana next week, you'll know why. Well, we got a lot to get to today, and like I said, like to joke around, but in all seriousness, coronavirus ain't fun, and I'm not having fun in any way, shape, or form doing it. But we'll try to have a little fun with you guys for 152. Doug Duren, the great and powerful Doug Duren, is coming up. We're going to talk about all kinds of things: music tastes, the back 40, working on land, farming, what it means to be a farmer in the modern age, and then a little bit on game cooperatives and what they could mean in the future. So stay for Doug Duren. The email inbox, Phil, has been hopping. Dude, I have been very happy with the effort in the email inbox lately. So thank you to everybody that emailed in over the last couple of weeks. All of them are long, and all of them are thoughtful, and all of them are well written. So keep it coming out there. But we got a lot to get to, but I want to start with one from Hayes Heel. Now, how would you say this? H-E-I-L. Heel?
Hail.
Hail? You think?
Like as in the Hitler variety.
Heil.
Heil. Sure.
Hayes Heil. He's not. He must not be a long-time listener because he didn't put in the pronunciation in his email.
Yeah.
But Hayes says, I want to thank you and Phil for entertaining me at work for a few hours a week by both making me laugh as well as embracing some tough to talk about topics that can really make me critically think about the ethical and moral responsibility we have as hunters and outdoorsmen. Although my dad is a big hunter growing up, I spent very little time entertaining the idea of hunting due to competitive sports and complete lack of interest. Now that'll do it. However, since graduating college and calling it quits on my athletic career, I've decided to pick up hunting and fishing to fill the quote-unquote void and occupy my free time. I moved to Denver after graduating college, which has made picking up these hobbies very easy, as it seems like we are on the doorstep of everything that hunting and fishing in the Wild West has to offer. I'll just move on a little bit. He says, because of this, I have been pouring myself into books, videos, podcasts to learn as much about what I hope to eventually be doing so that I have a thoughtful and well-educated approach to hunting and why I do it. I also live near downtown Denver due to its proximity to my office, so things like hunting can be a bit taboo around these parts. Anyways, I was listening to your most recent podcast with Robbie Kroger. I came up with a few questions and thoughts I wanted to run by you. As one of those residents of Denver that you talked about, and to recap for folks that maybe didn't listen last week or need a little recap, Robbie and I were talking about how political lines not only affect elections, but they affect the ballot box biology, and specifically in terms of wolves in Colorado with the ballot initiative that was Prop 114 that was on the ballot this year and passed to reintroduce wolves into the state of Colorado. Again, the idea that most of the state is red, but small pockets of high population centers like Denver, Colorado Springs are blue, seem to have tipped Prop 114 in favor of having wolves come on back. But Hayes says, I came up with a few questions. First of all, I completely agree with you and Robbie that this proposition has no place even being on the ballot. This decision seems like something that should be made by the biologists at CPW, not the general public who is largely uninformed on the subject in contrast. Secondly, I think I should note that this is an incredibly hard proposition for me, on which to vote, but I felt that it was my duty to come back with a decision on this. To get this out of the way, I voted yes on Prop 114. My reasoning for voting yes relied on a few things I found in my research. One, gray wolves are at one point a native of Colorado, and as an overreaching theme of conservation, it seems to me that having gray wolves return to Colorado is, quote-unquote, doing right by nature. Two, although CPW seems reluctant to admit it, it's widely known that a small group of wolves have migrated down to northwest Colorado from the greater Yellowstone ecosystem naturally, and supplementing this population cannot be a bad thing. The language of the proposition is confusing, but ultimately this is not a yes or no on wolves in Colorado immediately. Passing Prop 114 forces CPW to come up with a plan to reintroduce them, which may be forcing the issue a bit. He's a little bit long, but stick with us. He says, this brings me to my questions and thoughts. I know you mentioned that MeatEater supports this, but I believe that wolves should be in Colorado, whether I, Yuppie from Denver, ever see them or not, as they are a historical part of the state. I agree with you that I sympathize with farmers in northwest Colorado, as wolves are a vicious species that will kill their livestock without second thought. Also, as the member of a Colorado elk hunting Facebook group, I saw overwhelming displeasure with Prop 114 as wolves would kill all of our elk, and that it's already hard enough to kill big game here as it is. I am aware of the repercussions of wolves and their effect on cervids, as well as the battle that recreating on public lands can be. But isn't big game hunting supposed to be hard? Isn't that the whole point? That you spend all of this time and effort to harvest this animal for you and your family to enjoy? And sometimes it just doesn't happen. Colorado has the largest population of elk in the U.S., so wouldn't it be all right to potentially lose some of those to bring back a native species at the cost of some hunters not getting an elk? And he goes on. But Hayes had some good questions, some good things to bring up. Let me start by saying I believe what you're saying, the reasoning that you're using, while it may be sound, Hayes, there's no way for you to know unless you drive over across the Continental Divide and over to where the wolves would be hanging out and find yourself a rancher to talk to or somebody that manages a large tract or small tract of land that has livestock or wild mule deer or elk that they'd like to keep on that landscape. It's hard for you, even if you've done research, you've listened to podcasts like this one, it's hard for you to really have a perspective of what it means to live with wolves. It just is. It's not your fault. It's nobody's fault. The dichotomy, the difference between the Grand Canyon-sized gap between what it means to vote yes based on the reasons that you did and what it means to vote no based on the reasons that most of the right-leaning ranchers out there in Colorado might vote is it's tough to understand. But living around wolves is so much harder than it is, especially when you're talking about reintroducing them. So that argument is going to fall flat with somebody who owns land. It's going to fall flat with somebody who manages cattle. It's going to fall flat with someone who has to balance these populations. And as you mentioned, that's why I'm against having these types of ballot initiatives out there for people to vote on. I think the North American model of conservation, I know the North American model of conservation doesn't allow for citizen-based biology to come into play. We trust our biologists and the scientists and the state game management agencies to do this work for us on our behalf. We can challenge that certainly in the public or private forum if we wish, but that's how we've enacted game management in our space. But again, I will tell you, Hayes, that there is almost no way, unless you go find somebody and really hear them out, for you to understand the real impacts that this has on people in the ranching community. I've talked to them. I just had a close encounter with wolves taking down cattle in the place where I hunt, and I was able to think about the USDA aphis trappers that have to come in then, possibly trap these wolves or kill these wolves, the ranchers who lose money and then have to go to the state or the federal government to get reparations for the loss of cattle. And so this is twisted up. It's not as easy as, yes, I want wolves back. They're native to this landscape. and then, trying to reason your way into wolves in terms of hunting them, the hunters and hunting itself. I would imagine the impact to elk herds is probably the least of the worries to start. But I'm very glad that the 114 has a lot of provisions to protect ranchers financially, and it also has a lot of provisions for public comment throughout a 3-year process that'll get us to having wolves back in Colorado. As I said last week with Robbie, I want wolves in Colorado. I want them there, but I'm not blind to the fact that there are a lot of people that don't want them there, and they don't want them there for really good reasons. It is hard to cohabitate with wolves. They are meat machines. They are meat processors with 4 legs. They do not think about wild game management when they are taking down the food that they need to survive, and sometimes the food they don't need to survive. So lots going into it. We'll continue to discuss it. Phil, do you have anything from a non-hunter's point of view here?
No, not at all.
Do you have you ever seen wolves around Montana?
I'm trying to think. I don't think I've seen wolves. I don't think I've seen a wolf in the wild.
Wolf. Yeah, as I've said on the podcast before, the spot that I hunt south of my house here, where there's plenty of wolves around, plenty of wolf sign, heard them, seen them on trail camera, seen their tracks, seen their shit, all of it. They're there. They're hanging out in this range where I hunt. As I drive north back to town from my hunting spot where there is wolves, there's a big billboard that says "Stop trapping wolves." Stop the violence or stop the suffering.
Oh yeah, on the way, just Gallatin Canyon right there. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, exactly. So it's funny how these, and then talking to a USD aphis trapper who potentially has to come in based on some evidence that I gave him for my trail cameras and trap some of these wolves so they stop killing these cattle. The irony's not lost on me there, that there are really 2 different sides to this particular, and it's no different than grizzly bears. There are 2 different sides, I think, to these particular arguments. And it certainly goes well beyond, hey, if you hunt, just eat it. This goes well beyond that in terms of how we look at it. So we'll keep talking about it. Appreciate the thoughtful email, Hayes, and man, you're not wrong. Nobody here is going to say that you're wrong for voting the way that you did, but I would say that it's important for you to find maybe wherever you can some perspective of someone who will actually be dealing with these animals on a day-to-day basis, because you will not, admittedly so. So seek those people out, find their perspective, and see if they can educate you a little bit on what they'll be dealing with and why they would vote no for Prop 114, which was an extremely close vote. I mean, extremely close vote in Colorado. So on to something a little more lighthearted, Phil. Our friend A.B. Rich. Remember A.B. Rich?
Yeah, he contributed to the Draw Phil contest, correct?
Yeah, I feel like he had
was he the hand turkey guy? I'm getting it mixed up.
This is not the hand turkey guy.
Okay.
I'm trying to think of like Greg Morris. There's so many favorite THC listeners that are in the cult. And we haven't decided on the cult name yet, but I'm still leaning that way. But so many cult members. And A.B. Rich drew a wonderful version of you. In fact, I have it. I'm getting ready to hang it in the new THC office here at my house. It's a wonderful version of you, looking very handsome from earlier this year in our episode 100 giveaway. But A.B., he came correct. He created... And he beautifully photographed, by the way, like professionally photographed the salty vegan. And he created the wonderful presentation. He has all the right, in my opinion, all the right ingredients. So, round of applause, Phil. Round of applause for, I'm going to need you to do some clapping. Yep, thanks. Round of applause for our friend A.B. Rich. And thanks to the folks at Element. As always, drinklmnt.com/meateater for sponsoring this here program in the title position and making sure we can do what we do. So just like AB, go over there to drinklmnt.com/meateater. Get yourself some Element, some electrolyte drink mix. Keep you hydrated. Now I've been drinking.
Well,
I've been drinking a lot.
Hold on a sec. Are you gonna share the goods? What's the
recipe? No, yeah, it's coming. I got to do the business. Got to do the business, but it's coming. it's a wonderful photo, and I haven't shared the photo with you, but I will, of his kitchen with a cutting board. And so he starts off with, he's got like one of them, real hipster mason jars that people drink out of. You know what I'm talking about, Phil?
Oh, yeah, of course.
Of course you do. He has started with a rim. He's rimmed it with some Element Recharge and some crumbled bacon. So he's taken some of the salt from the Element Recharge and some crumbled bacon and rimmed the glass with that. He has garnished that with a pickle. I can't say, it looks like a little dill pickle as a garnish. He has then mixed together vodka, a third pack of the Element Lime flavor, club soda. He says, quote, I hate White Claw, but you can choose any White Claw flavor you want. And then he's mixed that all together with the bacon and made what he calls the salty vegan.
Wow.
He got and the vodka is Tito's, which I like, being a former Austin.
Representing Texas there.
Well done, AB Rich. Well done. That all comes from, if you forget, back a few episodes ago when we had the great leader of Anonymous for the Voiceless, Paul Bashir, on, which people, by the way, I get daily emails of people just still banging on Paul Bashir. So we might have to have him back on and see if he'll drink a salty vegan with me. I don't know if the bacon might not. He might have to not have the bacon on there.
Yeah, I think there are other plant-based options he could go with. Sure.
Plant-based. Is there plant-based bacon?
Oh, there's got to be. Come on.
Oh yeah. I mean, what am I being crazy? Of course, there's plant. What?
You're the guy who went to the vegan butcher shop.
Yeah, of course they have plant-based bacon bits for sure. I'm sure there's many, many varieties that you can find at your local store. But anyway, thanks to AB Rich for creating the salty vegan. I will post the ingredients and the photos on my Insta story in case you guys want to go make them. I would say if you're in my position, or if you're locked in a bedroom and nothing to do, make away and drink away. Because I have actually been drinking a lot of Element during my stay in the room here. It's working out pretty good. So thank you to those folks. Keep me hydrated and keep me alive during COVID times. Oh, okay. So moving on one more time. This one has a little bit to do with my illness, but our guy, Vincent Schaff, so Schaff. Schaff? Phil?
I would say, yeah, that's a tough. It's either Schaff or Schaff for sure.
We'll go with
Schaff or Schaff for sure. Yes.
I'm feeling Schaff. He says, hey, Ben, I was laid up in bed listening to your latest podcast. I'm one of the human trial people for one of the COVID-19 vaccines.
Oh, I love it.
I like how he described it. I'm one of the human trial people for one of the COVID-19 vaccines. Hey, listen, man, Vincent, thank you so much. Can't wait to get that vaccine. Can't wait to get out of this here room and have a normal life again. So keep on doing what you're doing. He said, I wasn't actually sick from the virus or vaccine, but had passed out while giving blood, which unfortunately happens about 1 in 10 times for me. So I had tuned into the podcast while recovering. So first, I hope you're not sick. Well, unfortunately, I am sick, but moving on to probably more important things. He said, second, on to politics. I support your freedom of speech. My best friend in the world is a Republican. I'm an independent who usually votes Democrat, and I did this year. My buddy JR is not a racist or a white nationalist or any of those things lumped onto Trump supporters, and I am a liberal. I am a hunter. I love shooting. I can carry concealed, but I also became a minister to assist my friends who are gay so they could get married. JR and I used to be on the board for an inner city football and cheer team in Connecticut. We worked side by side to coach and mentor the mostly black kids to keep them off the streets, out of gangs, and stay in school. We have never let our political differences divide us. We do talk about it a lot. We don't get angry and both understand why we vote the way we do. We also understand the weaknesses of the current leadership on both sides. Is Biden perfect? No way, but for me, he was the lesser of two evils. Anyway, I write all this to say, keep fostering the dialogue. I think both sides are closer than the media wants us to be. I grew up in Wisconsin, went to college and lived in Florida, and worked in New Jersey, Connecticut, and now Colorado, and I get why people feel disenfranchised. I can understand the frustration of ranchers in Wyoming who feel like their voice isn't heard or that policy is being dictated by California and New York. I can see why some people want to abolish the Electoral College and rely on the popular vote. I can see why others are afraid that if it happens, the states with small populations will feel their voices won't ever be heard again. Keep up the good work. I've learned a lot from you and THC. I don't know if I have a big... that's just an uplifting email, Phil, that I felt I should read to everybody. Obviously, Vincent, I feel the same way you feel. Shades of gray and all, with all of us. And I've been avoiding the news media while locked in this bedroom, and it feels really good to not have to watch any of that shit and not have to have my fears and insecurities tweaked by people wearing suits on the TV. It feels really nice just to look at this box room around me and not have to deal with that. But I do appreciate your listening, and I appreciate the thoughts about what divides us and what doesn't, because I'm telling you, more brings us together than divides us. I'll be a broken record on that, and if that's what being in the THC cult's all about, well, stick with us because we're going to keep doing it. Phil, any thoughts to bring the nation together during this time?
I'll share a story about something that brought me together with some people.
Okay.
Do you remember a few episodes ago when I made kind of like a call into the void, saying, "Hey, hit me up on Instagram, play some video games with me."
No, this did not happen. You did not
for
start
sure.
playing.
Oh, yeah. So shout out to the cult. I guess we're settling on that.
The THC cult.
Yeah, no, I got many responses, and I've been playing Destiny 2 almost nightly with some THC, with a THC listener named Brandon.
My favorite thing ever.
He's great. He's a really good guy to play with. It's been a lot of fun. I don't know who we voted for. It doesn't matter. We came together
to be an American. But
That's
at
right.
least I know I'm free.
Because when we go into the tangled shore and shoot aliens in the face, it doesn't matter our political views. Anyway,
stand up, Phil. Stand up for America.
Yeah.
That's
So
right.
thanks a lot to everyone who got a hold of me. It's been a lot of fun.
It's the little things that make me happy, Phil, and that brings me great joy.
Yep.
Right there. Well, thank you, Brandon. Does Brandon have a last name, or do you guys is the video game world, do you just like give first names?
Well, so you actually, it's kind of it's common courtesy. I don't know if courtesy is the right word. It's just you usually call them by their video game handle. So
what's his handle?
So mine is Desmond the Cat, and his is
What is happening?
And his is Horror Biz and some numbers. So you should call it like horror, like a horror movie. So you call him horror. People call me Desmond. It's normal. It's just normal behavior.
This seems fine. Well, everything just seems good to me. All right. Well, speaking of normal behavior, this week's Not So Sharp Moment is on tap. Play the jingle, Phil.
Work sharp, not so sharp moments. Sharp so you don't have to be. Season 2. Yeah.
All right, we'll check quickly in with the poop stories. Not that many are coming in. And so thank you to the cult for hanging in there and listening to Phil. Thanks for playing video games with Phil. It's going to take me a while to come down off that one, Phil. That was fantastic. Shout out to you. What is it? Desmond the Cat?
Desmond the Cat.
Does that have some kind of meaning, or did you just make that up?
No, have you ever watched Lost, Ben? The ABC show Lost?
I never did watch that.
There's a very great character named Desmond introduced in season 2. I was watching Lost at the time. I made the name. I was like, if I ever got a cat, I'd name him Desmond. And then this is a really interesting story. I'm sure the listeners are just on the edge of their seats right now.
Well, apparently so. Yeah. Apparently guys like Brandon are hanging out. I think maybe THC has caused an even amount of growth in hunting. Like it's a net zero. Because the amount of people that we have inspired to hunt has been zeroed out now by the amount of people you've inspired to play video games more often.
Oh, I apologize then, I guess.
Thanks for that. Yeah. So we got a really quick Pretty hilarious, not so short moment. This one comes from our buddy Rob. I'm not going to say Rob's last name, and you'll find out why here in a minute. He says, Ben, I have a not so short moment for you, although it kind of worked out well in the end. There we were, spring of 2007, 2 college roommates with Michigan turkey tags in hand. So jacked to have those tags. So jacked, in fact, that somehow we forgot that our university was hosting a college softball game on the day we were supposed to leave for our hunt. The problem being that my roommate and I were employees of the university grounds crew that was assigned to work the game and care for the field. You know, what you would normally do, Phil, in this case is go do your job. Go to work.
Sure.
You know, go care for this field for these lovely softball individuals. But he says, disappointed and not sure what to do, we looked for wisdom in a cheap bottle of whiskey. Wisdom, he says, wisdom's was found. That's how it reads. Around 10 p.m. the night before we were just to leave, we decided that we would not be needed if the softball game were to be canceled. Oh, no. Oh, boy. We raced to the maintenance shed, grabbed a few hoses, and hooked up the spigots near the field. We stretched all the hoses to the field and let them rip while we returned to our dorm for some shut-eye. 4 a.m., our alarms rang, and we returned to the softball diamond, which now resembles a wetland. I must note that there had not been rain in the area for a while, so no chance that anyone would believe Mother Nature could have been responsible for this new pond. We returned the hoses and sprinted off to the turkey woods. Around 10 a.m., we received a call from the grounds manager letting us know that we would not be needed for the game, and it was being relocated to a beautiful new local sports complex. We, in return, had a fabulous hunt and put down 2 terrific toms. The softball gals got the opportunity to play a high-end sports complex that they would never have gotten to play at. So, you're welcome, ladies. Play the jingle.
Work sharp, not so sharp moments, sharp so you don't have to be. Season 2! Yeah!
All right, Phil. I feel like this one might be controversial. Do you feel like this is a controversial act by Rob?
Explain your reasoning.
Well, I mean, he could have just done his job and then hunted the next. I mean, how long do softball games go, man? Like, you know, softball
hours,
game,
probably
a couple hours. Clean up the field when you're done. Get out there about noon. Given that you can hunt. Ah, man, I don't know if you can hunt in the evenings for turkeys in Michigan. Often states don't allow that.
I mean, yeah, I'd say it was a bad call for sure. But the thing is, he's recognizing that by writing into this here program.
Anyway, we'll let you here at the Cult. We like to let people in no matter what. And we are going to chide you probably forever, Rob, about this. But we are also going to give you a work sharp field sharpener more reluctantly than most people. But we're going to give it to you anyway. Only because you were honest with us. And hopefully now you feel better about yourself. Hopefully some guilt has been lifted off of your shoulders. You got this out there. Those poor softball players.
Yeah. Actually, Ben, the more I think about it, I feel like because a lot of these not so sharp moments, I'd say generally it's because it's like their fault, but it's not. This seems like it was an irresponsible choice that had a bad effect on others. So, yeah. The more I think about it, I mean, should we reward him for this behavior?
I'm already too deep. I already said I'd do it.
Good point.
Like 30 seconds ago. It's not like we can edit it out or anything.
No, this is live.
We do this live. So, he's going to get a work sharp field sharpener because I have this whole stack of them. You know, maybe I'll write a little nasty note on it. You know, like, get it together, Rob.
Okay, I like that.
Bastard. And also, did you do any stupid things in college that you can remember?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I mean, I like to think it didn't impact too many other people. It was mainly just like my liver and my head. But besides that,
yeah, my liver and my head took a beating as well. Still are. All right. Well, thank you to Rob. Thank you to our friends at Worksharp. As always, hit them up on their YouTube page. Lots of weekly sharpening tips going up there. Please support Element, Worksharp, these companies that support us. We can't do what we do without them. It's important for you guys to let them know they are appreciated. So now we got the beautiful and talented, the wonderful, the peace-loving hippie. The man you know is Douglas Duren. We're going to talk all kinds of shit and have a good time. Please enjoy our boy Doug. Douglas Duren, what's up, buddy?
Well, hey, I'm sitting here in my first light underwear. Just came in from working out in the not really cold, just a beautiful November day, and cutting some pine boughs and having a blast. So
that's what you do, isn't it? That's the life.
That's trying to, but I did take your advice, and I'm having a little. I'm not usually an afternoon drinker, but I'm having a coffee with a little bit of brandy in it. So,
well, we're gonna have a good time. Yeah. We're gonna cheers. I'm having a root beer because I'm hardcore. We got to talk about. So you had somehow made contact with Phil Jr. We're not using his name currently until we introduce him to the audience, but you have made contact with our new Phil Jr. Podcast engineer.
So it's going to be really hard to talk about without using one of his two names.
Go ahead. Maybe we should break the. Maybe we let you break the news.
I don't. Yeah,
let us down lightly.
But let's try it. So there's this fella.
This guy.
Who, out there on the social media, I have a few people follow me, and I'm fairly engaging. And I guess if people write, I write back. Try to do it with everybody, and especially the ones who were particularly interesting. Well, this guy that we're talking about, and I started an exchange some time ago. I don't remember the specific one, but he might. And it was about something that maybe it had been some social commentary or some hunting / social commentary. And anyway, he reached out in a message and said something to me about, thanks for what you said, or have you, what's going on with this? And, anyway, we had this exchange. Well, eventually, he's coming out west. I guess he was going up by Missoula 3-4 months ago, and going to go elk hunting, and had reached out to me, and I was like, hey, as you're rolling through town, he had actually asked if he could, stop and just say hello, and I'm like, sure. And we had a little more of a longer conversation. I'm like, come, on your trip, you want to break up your trip, stay at the farmhouse. And he's like, really? And I was like, yeah, well, what's the worst thing that's going to happen? I'm not going to, the house, the farmhouse is sort of isolated. Anyway, so we did, and we had a great time, a great conversation. Way younger guy, but got kind of a younger guy than what I thought. So I guess that means he's maybe a bit of an old soul. Anyway, he comes out and then continues on his trip. And at that time, he told me that part of his trip was to stop in Bozeman and talk to Phil and Corinne. And because of some things that had happened, which you guys have probably already talked about, or you will talk about when he comes on.
That's right.
And as it turns out, he's going to start working there at.
He's on the team. He's on the team.
He's on the team, and he's very excited about it. So as he was moving from Philadelphia, he stopped on the way back, or on the way out, a week or 10 days ago. Had his bow along, and I said, "Get your scrawny ass out there in the woods and kill a deer, will you?" And he did.
Well, I mean, we have this a very affectionate relationship with Phil, and I was initially worried that new Phil was more my style. Hunter, he's from Pennsylvania. He's a BHA guy. He obviously gets your seal of approval at some level. So I'm a little hesitant
at this point, but not complete yet. But he's on the right track.
He's on the right track. All right. Well, see, that's enough for me to be worried that I'm going to like this guy a lot, and then eventually Phil, I'm going to push because Phil plays video games. He does all these things that just we shouldn't be hanging out. But I have such an affection for Phil. I'm just worried that new Phil is going to come in and kind of steal my affection away. So I'm just trying to protect Phil by not saying his name or letting him on the show yet until I've determined what to do emotionally about this.
Oh, yeah, I can see it. Well, I had never seen Phil's face before a few minutes ago when we set this whole thing up, and here we are on video and stuff. And what an earnest fella he is. Huh?
Yep.
He just, I mean, he looks how he sounds.
I've gotten that both ways for myself personally. Have you ever gotten that? Like, you don't look how you sound, or you look how you sound?
Nah, people got me pegged for a crotchety old man right away.
Yeah, they peg you right.
O'Reilly Auto Parts are in the business of keeping your car on the road. O'Reilly Auto Parts offer friendly, helpful service and the parts knowledge you need for all your maintenance and repairs. If you're confused about what part you need, like what wipers are going to be the best, what replacement headlights are going to be the best, go into O'Reilly and talk to the people that work there, because they're great and they're super friendly, and they'll get you squared away where you walk out knowing you got the right thing. They've got thousands of parts and accessories in stock, either in-store or online, so you never have to worry if you're in a jam. Do you need your windshield wipers replaced? You need a brake light fixed? You need some quick service? They'll help you find the right part or point you to the nearest local repair shop for help. The professional parts people at O'Reilly Auto Parts are your one-stop shop for all things auto do-it-yourself, and you can find what you need in-store or online. Stop by O'Reilly Auto Parts today or visit us at O'ReillyAuto.com/MeatEater. That's O'ReillyAuto.com/MeatEater. There's nothing like snook hook sets at dawn or catching a tarpon in the moonlight. Find your next fishing trip made easy on fishingbooker.com and experience the magic of the Sunshine State or any other destination on your fishing bucket list. Book a blue water adventure in search of sailfish or go snapper fishing with the kids. With over 6,000 captains and trips to choose from, planning your next one just got a whole lot easier. Download the Fishing Booker app on the Google Play or App Store, or visit them online at fishingbooker.com to book your trip today. You ever get that feeling you're stuck inside staring at screens and a primal urge kicks in? You crave wide open spaces, fresh air, the chance to connect with the land. Well, maybe it's time to find your own piece of the wild, but searching for property can be a maze. That's where Land.com comes in. They got millions of listings across the country, from mountain ranches to hidden fishing holes. Their search tools are like a seasoned guide helping you narrow down what you want. Land.com isn't just about buying and selling. It's about finding a place to hunt, fish, explore, or simply sit by a campfire and listen to the crickets. So head over to Land.com today to turn one day into today, because trust me, there's nothing quite like the feeling of standing on your own piece of earth.
Well, man, how the hell have you not been on this show before is the thing that I was wondering about prior to this kind of, how did it take me getting locked into some stupid room here with COVID for us to have you on? I feel like I want to apologize for that, number one.
Yeah, well, or maybe it's like my buddy Kiefer says, he was just leaving room for improvement.
That's right. We got to get down the road somewhere.
Yeah. So, yeah, no, I'm really happy to be here. This is well, we talked about doing it in August. We almost did. Hell, we did a podcast at the Applebee's.
Yep. We had a whole thing going. We can replay it. Was it Applebee's? I was trying to remember if it was Applebee's or TGI Fridays. It was some nondescript.
Oh yeah. But did a really nice job of social distancing and had the place broken up. And that was the first time either one of us had been away from home since the whole thing broke.
Yeah, it's this August. We were filming the Back 40, which is out now. So if you want to see episode 2, starring Doug Duren, go to the Meat Eater YouTube page and check it out. But yeah, I mean, we're filming that thing. Not a lot is open. It's a small town, right? I can't even remember the name of the town. Somewhere in rural Michigan near the Back 40. Coldwater, Michigan. So if you're listening and you're in Coldwater, thank you for the great hospitality.
Especially the folks there at the Applebee's.
The only thing open is an Applebee's. I mean, the only thing open is an Applebee's. And so we wanted to eat dinner nightly at this Applebee's. And I felt like we could have had Applebee's, by the way, not a sponsor yet. But I think after they hear, we must have spent, old Meat Eater must have spent hundreds of dollars there at the Applebee's in that fine establishment. And if people could have only heard that podcast we never recorded. We really would. We had a waitress banter. You know how like those small town waitress banter is my favorite shit in the world.
Oh yeah, yeah.
We had a lot of that. We had a lot of steak and potatoes type of situations. We solved a lot of the world's problems. We texted Joe Rogan a bunch, bothered him about shit. We had a good time, man.
Yeah, it was a blast. It was a blast. And then the next night we had, we were there 3 nights, right?
Yep.
The whole crew was there the first night, which was, the whole crew is like, the way it used to be when Skinny came out here for the first time, just like it was, just a couple of people. The last time that we shot a couple episodes out here, I think it was like, 9 or 10 people. But so just kind of tight and lean, tight group of people working together and stuff. And that was fun. That was fun,
man. That was fun. What was your impression of working on, because, you've worked on a lot of, people have seen you on Meat Eater TV a bunch. They've seen you in the Stars in the Sky documentary, all that kind of stuff. And if you haven't seen those things, go see them. What are you doing? So there's a difference, right, between a show like that and then a show like Back 40. I mean, we've done a little bit of behind the scenes here on this program, and I know Kenyon's talked about it, but what was that, filming something like that, like where we weren't hunting, we were just planting trees, planting food plots?
Yeah, well, I mean, honestly, that's the kind of stuff I do pretty much every day, that's land management work. And it's really, so to be recording it, I mean, you probably remember a few times, like when we first started planting those trees, it was like, it took us forever to plant 6 trees. And I'm like, man, we got 35 more to put in, but we were setting stuff up. And when you film Meat Eater, now I remember, the first time that I filmed Meat Eater, Steve calls and said, hey, we just come out. And he's like, well, how do you do it? He goes, we go hunting, and a couple guys follow us around with cameras. And that's really, and, obviously it was way more than that, and great storytelling and all that. But certainly not from my perspective, but from the people we were working with. And so this was more like when we shot my part of the Stars in the Skies movie, where where you guys set stuff up and say, okay, well, here are the things that we really are going to accomplish. And Mark, I can't figure out you and Mark working together, and then Sam in the mix and all that. It was fun observing all of that. And then how do you guys work together? And what's that creative process? Because you're creating a show. And whereas I was, and so I wanted to be an active participant in that. And it seems like when we were doing Stars in the Sky, Steve and I had talked, and he's like, here's what we're going to talk about, man. It's all the stuff that you and I have talked about. It had it very specific about, and that was sort of some stories that we have. Whereas doing this, the story kind of unfolding out in front of us. And who knows what's going to happen? Shit's going to break. Although I could have predicted that fertilizer spreader of Mark's was going to break.
I must watch the episode 30 times, and I laugh every time I see his clips. It's so good. But
so that part of it was just, we were just doing that stuff. And the cameramen, Charlie and Justin, were really good. This is one of the things that goes through with all of the stuff that I've done with Meat Eater, and now this guy's we're with Captured Creative.
Yep.
The production company anyway, is they're just really good at staying out of the way and just capturing what's going on. I mean, I was watching the episode and I'm like, that's really cool what they caught there. And then how you guys cut that into the story and make sense out of my, ramblings and stuff.
I enjoy it, man. I'll tell you, I want people that are listening to hear some of the, how that process works, because for me, at least, it makes it more interesting, because we certainly don't script it. We don't be like, hey guys, say this.
Right. Yeah.
We put you in a situation that you need to be in anyway to get the job done, and then kind of see where it goes from there, which is fun, man. It's fun to kind of take that stuff and then whittle it down to over time. We start with an hour-long cut, and then boom, 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 we get it. We do some writing, we do some shaping, and then it goes out to the world, and it's hopefully seems like it's a seamless, 20-some minutes of real work and real laughter, real feelings, and that's what it is. So it's a fun thing to do.
I felt like, and I mean this as great a compliment as I can have, in my vast experience in television production, which is all with Meat Eater, right? it's just like, there's just a theme and a way things are done and a quality. And, I mean, I was really proud of it when I watched this. You sent me the rough cut last week, and my wife and I watched it. We laughed all the way through it. Like, well, that's just the way we weren't trying to be funny. It's just the way that stuff goes,
Yeah. Yeah. It's nice to see, like Mark, for example, Mark Kenyon, his personality gets amplified in a natural way, right? Like some of the things he does that are, cogent and right get shown, but some of the things that he does that are a little bit screwed up get shown too. But those things just get amplified in a way that hopefully makes people laugh and gives them a little, farming, as you say there, farming is hard work, man. It's unpredictable, and it's as much about overcoming issues as it is about the result,
Yeah, no, and it's really been fun being a part of the process with the back 40 for me, the land itself. I mean, the production stuff, I mean, you guys just kind of, we're going to do this, and I've done enough of it now that when you kind of give me the general idea, I mean, and we'd already talked about what we were going to, food plots, tree planting, this dude's going to come that is doing some work, and then going to hunt later. And I'm thinking about all the other stuff we could do, just because I know what that land, there's a lot needs to be done on that land. Or I shouldn't say needs to be done. There's a lot that could be done on that land and a lot that's being done. And the cool thing about that property is that Mark was talking about restorative agriculture and sustainable agriculture. And that's really important. Talking about tree planting is really important. The little things that you can do on a property, to improve it and, just make it better. But I think a big part of that is you can have a vision of it and then just start adapting, right? Adaptive management. And that's one of the things I've already seen in these last year and a half with that property. Mark took in a lot of information, and, I think you should pay more attention to what I'm telling him, but obviously he had a lot of other input as well. And I've liked his decision-making process, and the work that he's gotten done. It's very cool. It's very cool.
Yeah, for those, if you haven't followed the Back 40, shame on you. Go watch all the episodes now. And we're back. Congratulations, you've watched all the episodes. I think that I think it's important that people understand that. I think throughout this show that we've been putting on, we've wanted people to understand the minutia sometimes. So like what you might, if you were scripting a television program, you might skip over because it's boring. Maybe it's something that you would say, yeah, we did it, but not show what goes right and what goes wrong with tree planting and food plots and putting up box blinds and some of the things that we're showing this season. Planting switchgrass, pollinator pockets, doing putting beehives on a place. I'm happy that people can see that because it just shows you that there's hunting, but maybe hunting's half of it, and maybe it's less than half. And probably in your case, hunting is way less than half. Of
yeah, man. I always say if it was a yardstick, if the farm or conservation, what I do is a yardstick hunting, it'd be like 6 inches of it,
Yeah.
And although I'm very excited because deer hunting is about to start here, and that's part of what I'm getting prepared for. So it is that time of the year, but I'm not preparing. It's not like I'm working that land, preparing it to hunt it. I'm working that land, trying to do what the best thing is, and that quote unquote best thing is elusive. You have to be thoughtful about it. You have to have sort of. One of the reasons I like Leopold so much is he was so philosophical about it. A thing that tends to be more in harmony tends to be more right. How hard are we pushing this? That land, and obviously with agriculture we do that, and it's something I think about, a lot to sort of see a little property like this one. Beautiful. Mark should get a lot of credit, and the people he worked with. But the people he worked with to find that property. If you were to lay out a criteria, a landowner looking for, and I do this with landowners, right, or people who want to become landowners. Here's what I'm looking for in a property. And, and it's not like done. It's more like, well, what's the potential here? And then you put that plan, you start to assess it, you put that plan in place, and then you start doing things. And it's just a great process. And the back 40 is an excellent example of that, I think. And I think it's really relatable to people who are interested in having their piece of heaven.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's so much that, we think about when we think about that property, how it's very emblematic of lots of things. But certainly as a group, Meat Eater, I think we've probably more known for public land than private land, right? People certainly see us as a Western private land or public land brand for many reasons. Our relationship with BHA is solid.
Well, hell, where you're located, Bozeman, Montana,
When we started a company, we all thought Bozeman's nice. We didn't move to Sheboygan. Yeah, we didn't move to Sheboygan.
Yeah.
So,
Sheboygan?
I've been to Sheboygan. It's nice, man.
I
lived in.
Spent a week there one afternoon, right?
That's it, right. I spent 3 years in Peoria 1 week. Yeah, I mean that. So for us to take the leap to show this what the proximity to a piece of land like this means to us, means to Mark as a whitetail hunter, means to me as a storyteller and somebody who really cares about wild places and natural places, probably better described. It's been fun to kind of shrink it all down into a very small tract of land, and then get real intimate with every damn thing. I mean, you were there, we shoot close-ups of bugs and butterflies and shit on a hunting ship.
Yeah.
So that's been
part
cool
of telling the story, though, man.
Yeah. Yeah. It's been cool for me and then to have you come in and kind of give us, 40 some years of expertise. And you were also, as we said in the episode, a vagabond tree planter, which we'll get into some stories. But you have all this experience. Like, what does it make you feel to see some piece of private land so small play out like this for people to experience the struggles, the process, the good, the bad, the ugly, the sweat, the tears, all that stuff?
Oh, well, part of what I do in real life is, land management work and seeing that play out with different people and, everything from very wealthy clients to folks who are just like struggle, who my dream is to get 40 acres and do this thing. And it's the cool thing about what the back 40 is doing and how it's showing that process, and that emotion is really a part of it. And I don't care where you are. I mean, I'm kind of getting fond of that Hillsdale area, and I'm learning more about that region and what that's like and everything. And those kinds of things, that sense of place, I think is really, really important. And I think Mark's bringing that out. I mean, he loves that area, that region. Obviously, he lives a little ways away from there, but I mean, I get it, and I can see the attractiveness of it and appreciate that.
Yeah, it can be, even if we live in Montana, we think how harsh the mountains are, how harsh this landscape is, and that brings some attractive nature to us living in this place. But man, it's not that Michigan ain't a hard ass place.
Yeah.
To
it's
do
just
work
a different
in August.
kind of hard, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, and by the way, I gotta step back for a minute. I have dear friends in Sheboygan, Wisconsin. And
we're a pro-Sheboygan podcast. Pro-Sheboygan all the way.
Yeah,
we love
we
Sheboygan.
are pro-Sheboygan and pro-Plymouth and that whole area over there. Nice folks.
Nice.
Yeah, anyway.
I
just want to even that out because, I gotta live in this state, man.
The Sheboygan crowd can get harsh,
Yeah, it's actually a pretty cool area over there.
I've been there a few times. But yeah, I mean, I love one of the things I like about just chatting with you, like our Applebee's time, is that we can take, like, you can take these philosophies of how we relate to land. And man, I love talking about that because that's one of the things I've recently been sitting around in this room, locked in this room with COVID, thinking, boy, man, I want to be a wildlife biologist. Like, if I go back to college right now, about 5 to 8 years, I bet I can have a damn degree.
Yeah.
And all this shit I've talked on this podcast might actually stand up in court. But I do feel passionate about that proximity to land and this understanding of that you clearly have over decades.
Well, I appreciate that, but my understanding is my look at the land is much more philosophical when it comes to the understanding and the nuts and bolts of conservation. The first thing that I'm doing is talking to people who specialize in areas, and everything. You say if you would go back to school. I mean, I've said many times that that I would have gone back and I wish I would have gotten a forestry degree. And I could see myself being a forester, but that's just not the way it went. So what I do, I have an earth science degree and a history degree and a whole bunch of experience and classes and seminars and in all areas of conservation. But the common theme through that is like learning all the time and paying attention to the opportunities to learn and listen to the experts and trust them, but also question. And when it really comes to land management, it becomes a personal thing. When it comes to any kind of, conservation thing, it's not that I don't relate to the public land thing, because I worked on the trails on the Appalachian Trail and the North Slopes of the White Mountains. I was a high school teacher out there. I did trail work. I planted trees in national forests. It just happens to be where I am here. 95% of the land is where I grew up is, privately owned. So I think I have a perspective that informs a philosophy about, what's the best thing that we can do here. And, you can't be rigid about it, and so that's part of that philosophy is like, Bob Dylan said it used to go like that. Now it goes like this. I mean, that idea that I reserve the right to change my mind, that I can go in a different direction. You say it as pro-nuance. I think that's why you and I get along, because it is that kind of thing. I disagree with all kinds of shit that you'd say. But I just for the record, I don't even agree with myself all the time. So, the point is that there's a philosophy there about it that we can work through it, get better at it, progress. I mean, you want to call me a progressive, I'd say thank you very much.
Yeah, I think usually progressives win through history, regardless of the topic. But yeah, man, I like when I can, at least I think the most productive conversation ends up being that we have a foundational understanding of how we're both approaching something, and then disagree along the way. Then those disagreements where things become interesting and where we're able to learn from each other.
Yeah.
Without those disagreements, you're just going like this, shaking your head all the time, going, yeah, great point.
Yeah. What's that old saying about there are those who watch things happen, there are those who make things happen, and there are those who wonder what the hell happened. That's the kind of thing you put folks into those categories. And I kind of like being all of those categories some of the times, what the hell did just happen?
Be unpredictable at the very least.
Yeah, yeah. So that's where the fun is, That's where the fun is in all of this. And I guess that's something that I've learned, I know I talk about music a lot, musical influences and stuff, but Robert Hunter, Jerry Garcia, some great Grateful Dead lyrics and all of that. But I saw this interview with Jerry Garcia, who they were talking about, Grateful Dead doing this or the Grateful Dead doing that. And it's like he only had one question. Is this going to be fun? And God, it's just sort of like I've gotten to a point in my life now. I'm going to be 62 in January. It's like I'm starting to make decisions completely based on that. It's just
Yeah, shit, man. What's fun? When I get into these grooves where I'm sitting in front of the computer, and it's one of the reasons I fell in love with podcasting, because I get to talk to really interesting people. And a whole lot of the time, I'm in their element, or I'm learning from them, or I'm out doing things. And since COVID has come down, we're doing a lot of these, virtual conversations. It's nice to see each other, but you feel where the other person's at as much as anything to kind of
right. And you can only get that in an Applebee's.
You can only get that in a small town, Michigan
Applebee's.
I wish I would have
in the middle of COVID.
In the middle of COVID, nobody was too nervous over there. Everybody seemed like they were just doing okay. But yeah, I mean, that, like, to me, when I think about what maybe the audience can learn from you that they maybe haven't already learned, one of the things that I'd like to hear you talk about is exactly what, like, if you were going to boil down your philosophy on our relationship with land, because one of my favorite scenes of anything we've ever filmed at Meat Eater was when you were walking around and quizzing Steve Ranella on what trees were in a woodlot there, some timber as you're walking through your farm. And I just remember thinking, my dad never quizzed me like that, but he knew every tree, he knew every bird, he knew every plant, and he just picked that up naturally. And I never chased him down that road as much as I should have. So I think that's, like, your relationship to the land has transmitted to almost everything Meat Eater has done. So it'd be good for people to hear, like, how you describe your philosophy for that whole thing, as I'm sure it changes through time.
I have the good fortune of being this generation's steward of 400 acres. Has been in my family for 117 years. And you can't help but, when you're in a situation like that, and good fortune, right? You can't help but be in a situation like that when you sort of walking through or spending time on a property where you are, where everything around you has your blood, your family's blood has been a part of that. Your family's work has been a part of that. And I ended up boiling it down to, simply, that phrase, if it's not ours, it's just our turn. And I think I don't know if I've told this story or not, but we were cutting trees that were 125 years old. It was red oaks, and it was their time, it was their time to go. And I've been charged with that task. So how we're going to, how we're going to leave that. A dear friend of mine and tremendous forester, his name is Mike Finley, said to me, one of the things you got to understand, and when you're thinking about how you're cutting and what you're doing to your woods, is it's not just what you're taking, but it really is what you're leaving. And he and I were working up in the woods and walking out, and he said to me, "Boy, I'm really impressed that you and your family are willing to do." We were doing a real aggressive bunch of forestry in an area to try to regenerate red oaks and something that's a part of the driftless area and all of that. And he said, "I'm just really impressed you're doing. A lot of people just don't want to cut trees like that and do that kind of work, and really applaud that." And I was like, well, again, those trees are 125 years old, and they were saplings when my great-grandfather bought this land, and they've been managed and taken care of for all this time. At that moment, man, I literally could visualize my parents and my grandparents and my great-grandparents there with us. And I said, I guess I feel like it's not ours, it's just our turn. And Mike looked at me and goes, I ought to write that down.
That could be a T-shirt.
And I did. Well, and that really is the philosophy, right? And that's what I've come up with. We're actively managing a property that has been actively managed, and it's been different things. And it's like, well, what is it now? What could it be in the future? I mean, it always had to pay for itself in the past, and now it doesn't. And so we're able to do, quote unquote, the best thing or the right thing. And that's really, conservation has been a part. My great grandfather was a lumberman. My grandfather was a lumberman. We did work on our farm, timber work on our farm the whole time I was growing up. I just grew up around it, and I guess I absorbed a lot of it, but I have intentionally taught people about trees and quizzed people about trees. My daughter can identify Wisconsin hardwood trees and evergreen trees at 65 miles an hour. Going down the highway. What kind of tree is that? And she, by the shape and whatnot, and she never had any dendrology classes, nor did I. But that stuff is, it's really important. So there's always been a closeness. I remember when Steve first came, I was talking about watersheds. He goes, man, I grew up in Michigan. Nobody knew what watershed they were in. And I'm like, well, you're maybe just not aware of it. I think that guys like me, I don't think I'm unusual. Maybe I just got a bigger mouth than a lot of guys like me, but I don't think it's unusual. I know a lot of folks who know their place, and so there's an active participation in a property or in an area and in conservation, right? I just think it's active participation, and everybody's gonna make mistakes or shit. It seemed like a good idea at the time. I was a classic one, man. I planted a bunch of pine trees, good Lord, 40 years ago, and I planted them on the south side of the driveway at the farm. Bunch of big red pines, and they're this big around. And for those of you who can't see me, it's about 18 inches. And they're shading the frickin' driveway of the farm in this hill that you have to go up. And in the wintertime, it gets all ice and it never melts, and it's all of that. And if I could talk to my 20-year-old self, I go, hey man, you might want to consider planting those trees on the other side of that road. And my response to that kind of stuff is, well, it seemed like a good idea at the time.
Well, there's some beauty in that active choice, right? There's some beauty in that, like I'm sure you didn't think you were rolling the dice by planting some damn trees, but you had an active role in shaping the landscape. There's going to be mixed results. Has to be. It's too complex.
No doubt about it. And that's one of the coolest things now being for me. In the last third, I guess, of my life, right? I'm going to be 62, and I would say, my family has some longevity. I plan to live to be 90. So, I got a lot to do between now and then, so I got to keep busy. But out there on that farm, we talked. You mentioned the tree planting thing, and that's something that I did when I was 21 years old. I just went out and was a vagabond tree planter and came back, but that's 40 years ago, and I planted trees on the farm. So we're out there, and I planted hardwood trees. I planted pine trees, spruce trees. But I'm out there amongst that stuff now, and it's big ass trees, and you had that impact on that landscape, and you saw that. And so, I talk about it in the Back 40 episode about that impact. I don't think there's anything that you can do that's cooler than planting trees. I really like the idea of long-term prairies too.
Yeah.
That kind of a perennial thing, and the memories that become a part of it. Mark's got a pine tree that he planted in his yard with his kids that I gave him, and those kids are always going to remember that. He talked to him about it. Those kids are going to remember it. So those kind of memories are important too. I like to also say that plant trees and grow memories. So those kinds of impacts are cool. Not only from a conservation standpoint, but also from like a personal and philosophical standpoint.
Yeah. We talk about conservation all the time, and I know I have people that listen to this show and that are taking in our content that hear us talk about conservation, and they hear us explain what it is, and we explain the conservation structure, the kind of scaffolding of conservation within our government and governmental agencies, and we talk about even the more philosophical idea of conservation and land management and what that means. But I know there's a lot of people that listen to this that live in the city that never get to feel what it feels like to do something like plant a tree, right? Mm-hmm. We can apply that to the term conservation if we want or not, but it's planting the damn tree. That's what it is. But all of that's intertwined in this concept of conserving a place and stewarding a place. And I've gotten to feel that on the Back 40. I've certainly done it in other places, but I've felt it on the Back 40 that we're actually, like, I feel what it feels like. It feels good to see a bunch of deer on there. From the episode where you were on right now, Dan Jaggio's out sitting in a tree stand right now, trying to find a deer. And there's 10 times more deer on there than there was last year. If maybe 20 times, 30 times. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Well, let's not have too many of those. It's important to have a balance.
Yeah. Well, we're doing our best. But I guess I say all that to say, like, I know there's people that don't know what it feels like to plant a tree and watch it grow and then watch it have an impact, watch birds nest in it, watch squirrels use it. I know that there's people listening to this that maybe never will have that chance. So I'm glad that we're able to describe the feeling, at least, or what it really means to do it.
Well, we spend a lot of time talking about like hunter recruitment, and we've got like all great programs like R3, the Learn to Hunt programs. I know you're taking that Meat Eater folks are taking and folks out. I mean, I welcome new and learning hunters, pretty often, but I get a little concerned sometimes that hunting is really extraction, right? I mean, you go out killing something and taking it off the landscape. So the question becomes, what are you putting into that landscape to support that animal and make that a sustainable experience? And I don't know exactly where the best place to interject folks into that process is when you want them to be. I mean, what's the goal? Is it the goal to have a bunch of people with like the Learn to Hunt who are buying licenses? Well, sure, that's a part of it. But I think that a big part of it is we also want folks who are going to contribute to conservation in some way, that are going to be supportive of conservation in some way. So somehow, I think it's important that folks learn about that as a part of their process, as opposed to, well, we're going to make sure they know how to shoot good, and then we're going to take them out hunting.
Right.
And that's and I think there's room for all kinds of different opportunities. But we know that one of the challenges that we have in hunter recruitment is a place to go hunt. We also know that one of the other challenges, the two biggest challenges, are along with that is a place to go and someone to go with. And man, in the Midwest, let me give you an example. Our county, 85% of this county that I live in, Richland County, is considered deer habitat. 95% of that land is privately owned. So if you're going to go hunting in Richland County, Wisconsin, if you're only hunting on public land, it's going to be pretty limited, and it's probably going to be fairly competitive. We do a pretty good job in Wisconsin of exposing people to making public land available to folks, but then also some of our other public land programs, like voluntary public access and managed forest law open and stuff like that. And so people get that opportunity, to go out to those properties, and if they're just going to hunt. And that's like the thing that they want to do, that only, or that extraction thing. One of the things I dig about BHA, and particularly Wisconsin BHA, I don't know that much about the other chapters, and I certainly know a little bthere about national, but my experiences have been these folks are our Wisconsin chapter of BHA. They're out there working on their land, and they wear those shirts that say public land owner. They're kind of putting their time and their money where their mouth is too. They're getting out and they're adopting properties and doing that kind of work. And that's something I spoke with them about when I first met them, and it was really cool to hear that they were going. That's one of the things that they thought about a lot. And so they're learning about. I mean, these folks are committed to conservation also. So then, how can we do that? How do you introduce people to that idea, both on their BHA can do it on a public land basis, but how can we do it on a private land basis? And I think there really needs to be a thought about cooperation in getting more people out into our private lands.
Well, when we were first, I had this guy named Luke McCulley. I don't know if you've ever met him. I don't know if you met him, and he was on the Back 40 and on this podcast, and he's at that podcast. Yeah. He's at a UC Berkeley, and that was one of the things when we started to look at this idea of doing a show called The Back 40. I started looking for somebody like Luke who had studied the relationship between hunting, really only hunting, not fishing in this case, and leasing and the ownership of private land, and what did it really mean to the greater landscape of the United States. We know, we kind of have tallied up all the stats for how many millions of acres of public land there are. We've tallied those up. We've kind of presented that case through BHA and through other things. But like, what we all know that private lands, we all wish we had private land, all of us, if we were being honest. So like, he's a guy who found that, 26%, I think it's 26% of all private land in the U.S. is either owned for hunting or leased for hunting. 26% of all the land in the U.S. I mean, that's a quarter of the land. And you have landowners that are earning billions of dollars. I think like $1.5 billion a year in income from these 220 million acres that they're hunting. And so this is all private land. I mean, this is 220 million acres. A quarter of our country is either leased or owned specifically for hunting. And so then you start to think of like, what kind of impact can we have if we even had a quarter of that 25% manage their land in the same way, or at least around the same principles, right? If they knew their power, right? If only people like you and the Duren farm really knew the power that they had on a state level, maybe, but certainly on a federal level, certainly on a national level. And that's what got me thinking about cooperative management and what the hell can we do? What the hell can 64 acres really be? Because it can be a whole lot more than just 64 acres. And so I think it was good to present that idea. We presented that idea last year in the Back 40. We had Luke on. But now there's this idea like, let's grab a hold of it. Because there is this immense power in farms like yours and farms like the Back 40. Not only in access, but also in cooperation and trying to build a better, build a better state, build a better region, build a better nation.
It's interesting. We've obviously talked about this a little bit, and we have a bunch of ideas about it. But it's one of the bits of perspective in all of that I can bring is, again, as a guy who's 62 years old, I get to say, when I was a kid, and when I was a kid, around me, this area, the same area that I'm talking about, I grew up around here, and hunting access, hunting was just like going out and, a little bit of deer hunting. There was a lot of small game hunting, as a kid, but it was kind of wide open. Private land wasn't as closed up or as it is now, or what it wasn't managed. We were doing so much more management for it. And then over the last 40 years, no one had land around here specifically for hunting. That same let me finish that statistic I had before. About 95% of our land is privately owned. 65% of the land in this county is owned by people who don't live here. And, and that's a big change in the last 40 years. And those are folks who are owning it for those things that you said, for hunting or for specifically for hunting. You kind of punched me right in the gut with that. 220 million acres are leased, of land is leased or owned for hunting. Yeah. Private land, 26% of the land. It's amazing. So it's amazing. I've experienced that in the last 40 years. So there's less and less access around here. It used to be, you could go knock on the door and you knew everybody. Well, that land also didn't have a whole lot of value. We called it rough land and woodland, or nobody referred to it as woodland really. It was, how do you extract something out of that land to make it worthwhile? In my, since really when I was in my 20s and 30s, you could still farm around here and pay for a whole farm property. I mean, I know guys that my age that did that, but then they had to change over time. And then, as we know, a lot of small farms also sort of got ate up. But now if I took you around this area, you'd see I could show you all kinds of properties that aren't owned by, Farmer Brown, that they're owned by whoever, who then rents the cropland to Farmer Brown, but they have it for recreation. Well, those folks didn't buy that land to have a bunch of other people other than themselves, on there. But those folks are a real important part of this too, because they tend to manage their land, pretty well. It might be specifically for the thing that they want, right? Deer or whatever that happens to be. But you meet a lot of those folks at like private landowner workshop days and education days that are put on by various NGOs and whatnot. And one of the things that I've noticed is that when I go to those things, is I'm a young landowner. A lot of folks were older than me. And when they're trying to get work done on their property, they're at this thing learning about invasive species control or timber stand improvement or stream bank or, riparian management, a lot of basic land management stuff that's really important. And they're like, boy, I'd sure like to have this done, but I'm, 75 years old. And so how am I going to get that done? Am I going to, and so then there's programs that will help them hire people to come and do it. But I actually suggested recently to somebody who's asking me about meeting landowners, is that, take some of those classes, some of those field days. And that's a place where when a landowner says that's when you raise your hand. Is I came here today to learn about invasive species control and timber stand improvement. And I would be interested in coming and doing some work on somebody's property, doing this kind of work, and I'm going to learn how to do it in exchange for the opportunity to access that land for whatever reason. Well, the obvious one's hunting, right?
Yeah.
As opposed to a straight lease that, here's some money and then I'll have access to the property.
Yeah, because doesn't it that feels, as you said earlier, it feels extractive. I'm paying you to extract these things. I'm going to put some tree stands up, but I'm not going to come here and do anything other than make sure the deer are still around. In most cases, I certainly had leases where I did some work, but it wasn't as intimate or wasn't as it didn't feel like as cooperative as it would be in a case like you're mentioning there.
Well, yeah. So you and I've talked about this, privately before, but Aldo Leopold, one of both of our heroes, started this thing near Verona, Wisconsin. It was called the Riley Game Cooperative, and it's interesting because it's not really, there's not a lot of information out there about it like there is a Sand County Almanac. But these two, and the property that he bought, the farm that he bought and rehabbed, and that's what Sand County's all about, and where the Aldo Leopold Foundation is.
That's right.
At about the same time, he's taken a drive outside of Madison, out in this area called Verona, big grassland bottoms, and he's looking for a place to go pheasant hunting.
Yeah.
And he stops and starts talking to this farmer and asks him, hey, what are the chances? And the guy's like, yeah, I'd let you go. But, we have a lot of, because you stopped and asked, I'll let you go. And he starts kind of saying, hey, I've been having some issues here, with trespassers and people coming in. And so there aren't many birds around and that kind of stuff. And so it's, not being, and Leopold, who's developing his management philosophies at that time, private land management philosophy, says, my buddies and I are kind of looking for a place to hunt. How about we come out here and we do some things and he explained who he was and what he knew about and all of that. We'll come out here and do make some improvements to your property. Improve the habitat for game birds. We'll help you with trespassers. Aldo Leopold put up no trespassing signs. Maybe that's why the Riley Game Cooperative isn't talked about that much. And eventually became a classroom of private land, improvements in a way people can cooperate. And so this thing called the Riley Game Cooperative came out of that. And so it was a group of university professors and some other folks from Madison who would go out there and work on these farms, plant stuff in the habitat and the fence rows, help with chores around the property, pay the kids of the farmer to hatch and raise pheasant eggs right along when they're doing their chickens and all of that, and then putting them out there, and they're improving this property. And it grew from one farm, this guy Reuben Paulson's farm in Leopold, to I think 11 farms out there eventually. Yeah. And the expenses were borne by the people who were benefiting from it most, the people who were hunting, but the big thing where they were putting into it was sweat equity. So there was an exchange because there was a recognition that this is valuable. And having access to land, private land, or public land is valuable too. It's just not as, controlled. So on private land, of course, it's very controllable. And there's value to that. And now, as we've talked about, there's more value to it now than ever. Land is purchased around here, not for any return on investment. Yeah. There's nothing I could do on that 400 acres of our farm in terms of farming that would justify what we could sell it for on the open market. And that's really just changed in a generation.
Yeah. And you think like Leopold and Paulson were talking about this in 1931. It's not like it really had to be a community thing, because it's not like they could get on the internet and go into message boards and say, hey guys, this is what I'd like to do. Hey, community co-op, we're going to start a community co-op here. They didn't. It was who they knew, and the community had to come together to eventually do that. And I remember reading that they would have like dinners. Yeah. They would do a bunch of work in the summertime and then have dinners. Like Leopold invited some of the university students to come and study and do census work and stuff.
Yeah. It became a classroom, really.
Yeah.
And
so all of that was born from him, right? His initiative and telling people about this, and it being appealing even then for people to come and be part of it.
Yeah. And then again, amazingly, at the same time, he's a university professor, and he's rehabilitating the old farm where, he wrote about the Sand County Almanac, and where the shack is, and all that fabulous property. And you must come and visit.
Oh, it's on the list for sure.
What an interesting, perspective on that. He didn't expect that he was going to knock on the farmer's door and say, hey, you mind if I go hunting out here? Ask that favor. His approach was, I'm going to ask you for a favor, but I want to do one in return. And they got pretty specific about it. Yeah, you're right. They had these dinners. He kept meticulous records of harvests, and it was all stuff that they did because, of course, it was part of his study. And it really went on until the time of his death and a little bit after. And then there's that thing, World War II was in the middle of all that, and, kind of changed things a little bit. But I had the good fortune of meeting a fellow by the name of Gene Rourke, who, as a kid, was a part of it. He's since passed, but, family of, he was a university professor, and then his son's a forester. It's pretty interesting people those connections are still around. And I've spent a lot of time speaking with the folks at the Leopold Foundation about this and other conservation ideas. And there's this Stan Temple, who actually had the same position that Leopold had at the university, has written a couple of articles about it. But it's hard to find a whole lot about the cooperative, the Riley Game Cooperative. But it's fascinating, and I asked him, well, why do you think it didn't continue? It kind of fell apart a few years after Leopold's death. And he said, well, some of it was Leopold, kept it together because he was sort of the center of it. And you know how any kind of, you can imagine it was Aldo Leopold, for God's sakes. Of course he would keep something going. It would be very different after he was gone. But is there somehow that we can take that idea and apply it to private land in places and with people who are receptive to the idea of cooperating on both ends of the deal, of the landowner and the access seeker, and there be a fair understanding of conservation, like-mindedness of conservation, and you sort of, match people up. Like-minded folks, not every property is going to be the same, but have like-minded. How can we get like-minded folks that kind of opportunity? How can we build that?
Yeah, you think of like a lot of things you read in the Sand County Almanac, a lot of things that were philosophies and ideologies and kind of were applied, and some not even applied by Leopold. They translate today. You and I could still sit here and talk about them and go apply them to your farm or the back 40 or something. The land ethic that was kind of spurred on by the Riley and other places still has, I'm sure, energy in your area of the world, but it has energy through conservationists of today. And we're way more connected than we ever were. We're probably too connected. We need to maybe back off a little bit. But we're so connected. There's so many things we can do to connect the people that need to do it. And I love that you brought this up too, because I've been thinking about this. Isn't it that the people that are going to want to be a part of a game cooperative, at least initially, are going to be those family farmers, are going to be the generational landowners who didn't purchase this property 10 years ago to hunt deer or to just make a little money or flip it, make a little money, are the people that are invested in a piece of land for like you are, for many, many generations. Aren't those the folks that are initially going to want to be a part of something like this and have more of a reason to want to see their place kept up?
I think so. On our property, like I said, I happen to be the steward of this generation, and this is my generation is the first time that this farm didn't have to pay for itself. My folks bought it from my grandparents, who bought it from my great-grandparents. None of us had to buy it from my folks, mostly because we all worked out there I grew up in town, but the farm's a couple miles away. We grew up, we worked on that farm my father used to say things like, for a roof over your head, right? And I remember resenting that even in high school, that having to ask for a couple of bucks to go to the movies or whatever. And, because we literally didn't get paid. And, but man, all these years later, we have that property and it doesn't owe us anything. All it has to be is financially viable. And I think that that's probably part of why philosophically my family, my siblings and I have opened up to this idea. As long as we can make this financially viable, that, let's share it with folks. And so we've done that. I've been for the last 2 or 3 years experimenting with this idea of having people come to the farm, and welcoming them as a part of the hunting group. In some cases, they're just coming for like a one-shot deal, right? In other cases, now I've developed some longer relationships with folks who are hunting with us, who are accessing the farm, in exchange for, fair work. And some of it's, working with me and we're talking about conservation, and I try to do things that are a little quieter. So we're not like running equipment and chainsaws and stuff, but, you kind of develop a relationship with a person and then you're telling them about your property, and they are learning about that, and they're learning about conservation and developing a appreciation for it. And, I've been doing this I've been sharing the farm with a lot of folks over the last several years. And what I've kind of boiled it down to, Ben, is I want to share the place with people who are making a contribution to conservation. So it doesn't even necessarily have to be something on the farm. In my case, I have a friend, and also I have a friend who is really into trout fishing. He's like, hey man, if some people want to if they do a day of work or whatever on a trout stream, public land trout stream, I'll give them access to my place for turkey hunting in the spring. That's a pretty cool idea. Our friends at what's it called now? The National Deer Association.
That's right. Newly minted.
Newly minted, the National Deer Association. They've done these cooperative ideas for a while, but those were more like a cooperative of neighbors. And then having sort of cooperative ideas about how we're going to manage deer and, habitat and that sort of stuff. Well, this boils this down a lot more. And you can understand why what all the different landowners or neighbors would have invested in it, right? Because they own a piece of property or they're a part of a piece of property. Well, we're talking about boiling that down a little bit further. So it's really interesting to me to share the land with people of all sort of stripes. But they all are doing that one thing. They're making a contribution, some of it on the farm. I mean, everything from carpentry to fixing fence. And those were the kind of expectations that, that I had.
O'Reilly Auto Parts are in the business of keeping your car on the road. O'Reilly Auto Parts offer friendly, helpful service and the parts knowledge you need for all your maintenance and repairs. If you're confused about what part you need, like what wipers are going to be the best, what replacement headlights are going to be the best, go into O'Reilly and talk to the people that work there because they're great and they're super friendly and they'll get you squared away where you walk out knowing you got the right thing. They've got thousands of parts and accessories in stock, either in-store or online, so you never have to worry if you're in a jam. Do you need your windshield wipers replaced? You need a brake light fixed? You need some quick service? They'll help you find the right part or point you to the nearest local repair shop for help. The professional parts people at O'Reilly Auto Parts are your one-stop shop for all things auto do-it-yourself, and you can find what you need in-store or online. Stop by O'Reilly Auto Parts today or visit us at O'ReillyAuto.com/MeatEater. That's O'ReillyAuto.com/MeatEater. There's nothing like snook hook sets at dawn or catching a tarpon in the moonlight. Find your next fishing trip made easy on fishingbooker.com and experience the magic of the Sunshine State or any other destination on your fishing bucket list. Book a blue water adventure in search of sailfish or go snapper fishing with the kids. With over 6,000 captains and trips to choose from, planning your next one just got a whole lot easier. Download the Fishing Booker app on the Google Play or App Store or visit them online at fishingbooker.com to book your trip today. You ever get that feeling you're stuck inside staring at screens and a primal urge kicks in? You crave wide open spaces, fresh air, the chance to connect with the land. Well, maybe it's time to find your own piece of the wild, but searching for property can be a maze. That's where Land.com comes in. They got millions of listings across the country, from mountain ranches to hidden fishing holes. Their search tools are like a seasoned guide helping you narrow down what you want. Land.com isn't just about buying and selling. It's about finding a place to hunt, fish, explore, or simply sit by a campfire and listen to the crickets. So head over to Land.com today to turn one day into today, because trust me, there's nothing quite like the feeling of standing on your own piece of earth.
Yeah, I mean, there's examples of this. There's certainly block management in Montana, where there's type 1 and type 2 block management areas, which is essentially the state and the landowner have an agreement that there's a list of rules that hunters must abide by, and then there's certain dates, and they set all the stipulations, and hunters can go sign a little piece of paper, usually at the front gate of the property, saying, here I am, and here's where I'm hunting. And then you're free to use that area as designated. The problem with that is, I mean, there's no real problem, but the thing that I like about your version of this is that it's more intimate. It requires a real connection with the person. And I grew up hunting a small organic farm when I was a kid. If you would have asked me, was that yours? As a kid, I probably said, well, it was partly mine. Like, I hunted there my whole life. I knew the landowners. We shared great times with the landowners. We hunted with their kids. We were kind of a part of their family farm. And that intimate connection helped me understand the trade-off for them as farmers, what we could do to help them with crop damage permits and all that kind of stuff. So that was part of my childhood. I was part of that farm.
Yeah.
As much for the landowner as for me. You know, people come to your farm, they teach their kids to hunt there. They become part of your farm and vice versa. And so that's the thing I love about it. And I get fired up about this idea because I think we're in it. We need it. We need it as Americans. We need to know each other better. We need to give each other things and trade and feel as if reciprocation is possible in this day and age. And so I love this idea. I think it would show people what, hunting and land really has to offer. Not only good wild meat and good adventure and good times outside, but also a connection that we need. We have to have.
Yeah.
And you can't have it through a BMA in Montana where you just sign your name on a piece of paper and go hunt. You don't know whose land that is. You don't know anything about it. And so I love the idea. I think it's your idea too. I look at it as I'm like, that's Doug's shit. Nobody steal it because I'll smack you.
Well, I'm just borrowing it too, man. The Leopold idea, it's interesting where I'm sitting here in Casanova, Wisconsin, is about halfway between the Leopold farm on the Wisconsin River, about 30 miles away, and Frank Lloyd Wright's Taliesin, which is about 30 miles away in the other direction. And two, really influential people in my thinking. Frank Lloyd Wright, who was an interesting character. I mean, you can read about him, and was a brilliant architect and all that. But his school, the Taliesin School of Architecture, that was at Taliesin, was a hands-on learning experience for people who are also working with the master, right? I mean, they're learning about architecture and all that, but they're also learning about building with rock and structure, and they were going out and actually building Taliesin. If you go through Taliesin, you'll see these different sections essentially done by different people at Frank Lloyd Wright's direction and his work, his craft, his artisans' direction. And so there's a lot of ways of looking at that. It was like, well, hell, Frank Lloyd Wright got his house built for nothing, it's cheap labor and that sort of stuff. But that's really what it is, right? There is an exchange. And so I just felt that was kind of something that when I learned about Taliesin and the architecture school, and I went through that, and then Leopold and the Radley Game Cooperative, this seems to be like it's halfway in between, and apparently that's what Casanova means. That it sort of it is halfway in between all of that, and I just think that those, there's going to be guys that they're just going to want to lease some land, or they're going to want to pay for a hunt, and that's cool. Outfitters, guides, land leases. Well, I'll tell you a little secret. It's not a secret at all. It's an open secret. Steve's mentioned it before. I lease our farm for 12 days to a group of guys for bow hunting. They get first crack at the deer and the whole thing with bow hunting. They pick out their days, and it's a big old bow season here in Wisconsin, and their time is over with for this year. And they love it because they are getting that connection to our property. They're coming there, and I do a few things for them. They're figuring it out on their own. I'm not guiding them. I'm not outfitting them, anything. They have access to a place to stay, and then it's them out there figuring that place out. And they're paying for that. And my partners in the business, in the farm, the LLC, the business, love it because there's a revenue stream, and they have said, well, what's this hunting thing worth? Because not all of my siblings are hunters, and I'm like, well, it can help with the property taxes and utilities and that kind of stuff. Cool. So I'm doing that, and then that, which is not a traditional lease at all, right? I mean, usually you lease a property, you lease it year round, and you get to do all kinds of stuff. Probably the kind of thing that you talked about. Or an outfitter or a guide leases it, and then he's bringing people in every couple of weeks and doing those kind of hunts. So these guys have it. They're a part of the thing. They've been doing this for a few years now, and it's great. And then after that, I've got some friends who hunt the property, bow hunt it. Some friends that do who contribute to the farm or contribute to conservation. Family, we're about to have gun season is going to be here on Saturday, and my brother and two nephews are going to be here. And this is the first time we're going to hunt together in 3 or 4 years. And so I don't have a whole lot. I mean, between that and COVID, we're not having a whole lot of guests for the first part of the gun season. We're going to, on the back end, we're going to have, a few. But on the front end, it's going to kind of be a family thing. And then as you move down the way, there's a little more opportunity for access. And so if you can kind of combine all these things, with an attitude of sharing. I think that landowners, like you said, can balance that over a period of time.
Yeah. And like you said, that there certainly can be choice. People can choose to just say, hey, you know what I'd rather do? Pay money to lease a place and not have to worry about doing any work or getting to know anybody. I'd rather just lease it, hunt it for 2 weeks a year. I got that extra money. It's perfect. I'm not going to abuse the place. It's not going to abuse me in terms of the cost. And that's okay. But I think what you're talking about and what the Riley was much more than that. And I think it obviously, as the Riley Game Cooperative grew, it grew organically. It grew through through his efforts and through his connections and through his sensibilities. So, I think
and folks seeing that it worked. I mean, it ended up spreading to 11 farms, but it started with one.
Yeah.
And then people are like, what are you doing over there? Well, yeah, I'd like to do that. Well, are there more people who want to do that? Yeah, there are. Well, and so, you can kind of keep that going. And so one of the things that we committed to as a family is to keep our farm financially viable. Think about, literally thinking about 100 years down the road, sharing it with others, being a good example, and doing the quote unquote right thing. All of those things are all combined into one, one big old ball that different parts of it are emphasized at different times.
Yeah, I mean it's important. So I've been thinking. I know you and I have been talking about ways to make this happen. There's other people in the industry that support you, obviously, companies, individuals. I just feel like the pump is primed to can at least provide a place digitally that sets the guidelines, that says like, hey, here are the ways that we do this. This is how our approach works. You could do whatever you want outside of this, but if you want to get involved in this is how this approach works. Very much informed by Leopold and the Riley, and gives people a place to connect with each other, and find each other and sign up for something and do the work and document the work that's being done.
And one of the things that I've really liked about, like yesterday after the Back 40 episode came out, I went on to the YouTube thing and answered, just kind of commented with some of the things and people are hungry for that. And people are, there's input too, right? I mean, it's like they want their input. When the cooperative idea, I'm not sitting out at my farm going, okay, folks, this is what we're going to do. And this is how you're going to do it. And then this is what you're going to, and people want to learn from me, but the thing that they're going to learn from me is an attitude of that owning a property there's work. It's not just extraction. It is management, and you have to figure it out, and your management has to be adaptive. So a part of that is, I'm not like waving a magic wand and saying, I am used to be, when it comes to hunting and some of the things, used to be on the farm, there were two rules. The captain's Doug is the captain, and the captain is always right? And to a certain degree, that's still the truth. But I'm like, wanting to give that up more. I mean, ultimately, it all hits me, right? I mean, I'm the manager of this property. But it's really interesting to me when I have folks out, like these guys who lease from me, and then some of these other folks who come out, and some of them are wildlife ecologists and habitat ecologists, and some of them are plumbers, and some of them are carpenters, and all of that. But they have their ideas are welcome, and their experience on that property is really interesting. And they can say, well, this is what I saw. And, the first suggestion everybody has when I know they're really interested is like, hey, I think if we just move that stand 10 yards up the hill.
that's the key to everything.
That's the key to everything. But that's sort of the beginning thing, right? They're out there observing, because that's what I encourage them to do. And then come in with, ideas. And do you know what, multiflora rose is? Do you know what prickly ash is? Do you know what autumn olive is? Do you know what an elm tree is? Do you know what these things are and how they relate to that area where you're hunting? And they have to have an opportunity to kind of spend some time on a property to learn that stuff. I mean, it's transferable. The knowledge is transferable, but boy, that intimacy that you can end up having with a property when you go, well, don't those pine trees need to be thinned? That they can start thinking about that sort of thing. And hey, and I'll help you come out and do that. That's the kind of stuff I think is really cool. When I've had people start saying, it seems to me you need some help with.
like you said, when you start something like this, I think BHA is a good example of this. They're not the only group that is fighting for public lands. Your hat says TRCP. They do a ton of work, but they do it in a different manner, and it's a necessary manner. It's more DC. It's more insider. It's more hit the legislation. BHA has built a community of people across the country who have kind of the same value system or a similar value system, at least when you apply it to public lands. Mm-hmm. And I think you could do that with a game cooperative and, something that brings people together around an idea that doesn't necessarily have to be applied the exact same way in every place, but at least the idea. There's a lot of different things in Wisconsin that BHA local chapters do, mm-hmm. that the guys in California don't do, or the guys in Texas don't do. Each state chapter that I've worked with kind of has a different thing to champion, but that all is wrapped in public lands. Mm-hmm. And in this idea, I'm like, man, you could do the same thing where if you just said, here are the ideas and the value system that this is wrapped in and what we're trying to achieve. It's regionally going to look different, but it should feel the same and it should have the same intent.
Yeah, like a framework. There needs to be. We need to develop a framework of, here's the general idea. Here are the input. You have to assess needs and and identify opportunities that private landowners would be open to.
Like Christiansonly.com, like a dating site, except for landowners and potential hunters and folks that want to use that land, man.
I can really I see this as a great opportunity, and I hope that it's something that we can continue to work on. It could really be a monster, but a framework that's repeatable and movable is what I see it as, and then a place to connect.
I think it's more profound. Like I think it has an opportunity to be organic and profound in that way. For people to really understand the need for this. I'm passionate about the need for it. I know there's a need for it. I know there's plenty of people listening right now that wish they had a website they could go to and look around for landowners that were looking for somebody to clean the chicken coop and, hit the drill on the back 40 there. And it's for a chance to go, shoot a pheasant or a turkey. I mean, I just know that there is, and I know they need it more than they know they need it. I know that the landowner needs it. They need to see a community of people reaching out saying, I want to help. They need to see that. And the people need to see that these landowners want them there too at some level, in the right way.
Well, and that they appreciate each other. Here's a great part of the reason that I've kind of evolved, if that's the word, right? I mean, people still, we've been replaying my first meteor where we talk about wearing the sombrero and buck management and all that. Yeah. And we've never had a real strict buck management program, but, and hell, truth be known, we probably manage, for bigger bucks now as well as we ever have. We just don't talk about it. I mean, it's like you shoot that, you go ahead. The only rules we have for hunting are, take a good ethical shot. And we're going to celebrate whatever deer it is that you got. Your Phil Jr. shot a little buck on the farm 10 days ago that antlers kind of looked like this Sharpie here.
It's got to start somewhere, Phil Jr.
But you got to start somewhere. But the where I got thinking about this too was the idea, because I've received some letters. Remember Mark and Steve did a thing called podcast called Permission. It was like, well, how do you get permission? And I remember Steve saying, man, I know I'm asking people for a favor. And yeah, I get that. Well, what's the favor you're going to do in return? And, I think that, that's important. And they're talking about, well, how can you gain access? How can you get permission and stuff like that? Well, I think that the number one thing in that is recognizing the value of it. And I don't necessarily mean the monetary value, but the attitudinal value. But it bummed me out a little bit when I was reading some of the comments in those podcast notes where people were saying, "Oh, I always take my kids because they're a little softer when I ask permission. It's a little easier." And Mark writes about how he did it, but I guess my point is those days are gone. One, I think gone more and more, but the other part of it is it's freaking hard to do. Man, I've walked up to people, knocked on doors, and it's just like, I was in sales for a long time, and so I'm pretty confident when it comes to that kind of stuff. But you get that sick feeling in your stomach, and you know that because 99% of the time you're going to get rejected. Well, and most of the time for good reason, not just I'm not interested. It's usually we've got people hunt here. It's it's all that kind of stuff.
I always say every landowner has a nephew that hunts.
Yeah.
Every landowner's like, well, my nephew hunts this spot. And you're like, well, thank you. I know you all have, is it the same nephew that hunts every ranch?
Or they just don't want to deal with it or whatever.
Liability.
Liability is an issue. And that's actually something that as this idea develops that, it also can be addressed. I've addressed it on our farm. We actually carry an additional insurance liability waiver, and the expectation is when you're doing this kind of thing, the berry picker laws, they say if you allow people, there can be an exchange up to a certain amount,
right?
Without there being liability. The other part of it is I'm not asking people to run. Go, hey, not like ask Mark to go and run a skid steer.
Well, also too, when you think about that. Over the years, I've seen this play out. We talked about this last week on the podcast. We had a group of 100 hunters, and I don't even know where these people knew 99 other hunters to go and do this. Up near White Sulphur Springs in Montana, 100 hunters got together and surrounded a herd of elk and shot 50. All opened fire at the same time and shot 50 elk on this BMA in near White Sulphur Springs in Montana. And the BMAs, like I explained earlier, this is a deal that the landowner has with the state to allow hunting access. It's not managed, and these people went in there and just marauded these elk.
This happened recently?
This happened recently. 100 hunters, and we're thinking like, and obviously the Galt Ranch is a pretty famous around here ranch up near that area, and one of the Galt family members was quoted as saying like, now I gotta think, am I going to stay on this BMA program? Am I going to still allow these people to come in and hunt my property by just signing a piece of paper? That's when they walk in the door. And so that's the kind of thing that you're fighting against when you go knock on somebody's door. The fact that 100 assholes in Montana one time, isn't that fucking crazy, man? Like 100 people. Like, how do you get that together? That's like a small army.
Well, right. Who's the hell? I want to know who. I'll tell you what. Who the hell was the guy who pulled that together?
That's what I'm saying. Talk about a cooperative. We call that the asshole cooperative. Like, everybody get together, act like assholes.
We're all going to get a half of elk out of this.
Yeah. Have you ever seen that movie where they go knock loose? Like that's what it is, man. Yeah. Fire for effect.
Wow,
but that's
I had no idea.
One thing like that,
That's one of the things about as a private landowner, I don't want to give up the control of my land. And the way in Wisconsin, at least, and I don't have vast experience in other parts of the country, but there's two programs in Wisconsin. There's Managed Forest Law Open and Voluntary Public Access. And Managed Forest Law Open is a tax incentive program that you pay less in taxes if you open it to public access. There's some real issues with it, which we could have a whole discussion about, but that's the long and short of it. The problem with that is it's wide open land. Now, if you're in a county where 95% of the land is privately owned and 5% of the hunting land is privately owned, and there's 5% of that public land that is getting pounded, our dear friends at Onyx have provided us with the technology to go, there's some voluntary public access. I mean, that's fantastic, because if it is open and it isn't a program, then people should have access to it, right? So there's that, and then it's just another piece of wide open public land, and in small areas it can be nightmarish. I have a friend who I know he's not going hunting this weekend with his wife because she's not comfortable on the small public land parcels. He's going to go, but she's not going to. Anyway, so you got that, and then voluntary public access funded by Pittman-Robertson number is very similar. And in Wisconsin, it's wide open. It's not like you can control how many people go in there. It's either on or off, right? So what we're really talking about with this idea of a game cooperative is a longer-term relationship, hopefully, or maybe just a one-shot deal, and people kind of learn, and then they move on and do their own thing.
That's
but
right.
It's a longer-term relationship with that land, and the landowner isn't giving up the control of their property. Like when stuff goes wrong, and I can tell you, I won't get into the details of it all, but I've had issues with people that I have welcomed onto my property making bad decisions.
Yeah, man.
And I've had to say, yeah, that was a bad decision that you're not going to get the chance to repeat on this property.
Yep. I know you told me one of those stories, I think, there when we were on probably at Applebee's talking about this exact same subject.
Yeah.
And, you just hope that it's not 100 people shooting at a bunch of elk. But, I mean, you don't really know.
Yeah, definitely not. And that was even that one particular instance was ended up being a learning experience for everybody involved as well, right? And I don't think that person given the opportunity will ever make that mistake again, but it's just unfortunate they're not going to be able to do it on our property.
Farm. Well, yeah, man, I think I know you know this, and I don't know how this effort will take shape or exactly what where we'll get with this, but I know that it's I would say it's really, I think about it quite a lot. It's like a fervent thought that I have that this is something, as much as the hunting community needed a decade ago, 12 years ago, 15 years ago, to rally around public lands and realize what they really are. I think we've achieved that in a lot of levels as a hunting community. We now understand these things a little bit better. We have a value system in place for public lands, whereas 15 years ago, public lands is where you didn't want to go. It was void of game, it was trash. Now it kind of has a different system, scaffolding around it that allows us to understand it better. And I think this idea of access to private land, I think we can and need to do that as well. There's like a private land lease association, I think, for a hunting lease association.
Oh, is there?
There's a bunch of other groups like that that have, relatively the spirit of what we're talking about. But I just think the value system that you have championed, that you've talked about on all the MeatEater platforms, is a super important touchstone for something like this, to really give people this idea that we're all thinking about the damn same here. We got a lot of people we're all lined up. We need just somebody to tell us that we exist, And so I really want to do something. We'll do something. I don't know what it is, but as I told you when we were talking about this before, I'm like, goddamn, if we are, if anybody's lined up to do this, it's us.
Yeah.
Like if anybody can pull something like this off and marshal the resources necessary to do it, it's us. So why the hell not us? It's our turn, I guess. There you go. It's our turn to do it.
Yeah, it fits a lot of things. And timing is everything. Timing is really important. And that opportunity really does exist now. It's so interesting. It's like going back to the back 40 idea that here we're talking about this on this, 10,000 foot level. And you get down to, this is what I really saw on that episode, or the way I felt. And I was proud of this, that we talked about 10,000, 5,000, 10,000 big ideas. And then we're down there planting frickin' trees and spreading fertilizer with 5-gallon buckets by hand, Kenyon. God, I can't believe
what is wrong with you, Kenyon?
I can't believe he doesn't have a decent fertilizer spreader. But, that's kind of it. It's a big old world, right? I mean, there's all of that. And then you were drilling it down to those very specific skills and ideas and things, that seed, when we were talking about seed and that sort of stuff. And that kind of level of understanding, I think, is really important for people to develop. I think that's a big part of it as well, Ben.
Yeah, I mean that micro macro sensibility to understand. I love working on. It was that when we were out there planting those trees. I stood in the background and said like, "Hey,
yeah, I noticed you really didn't plant any trees."
Well,
you were going to help. You said you were going to help, and then
I was like, I'm directing this episode. So
so I'm going to be sitting over in the truck here in the air conditioning.
Directors don't do anything.
Oh man, that's so not true. You and Samantha were just so. It's just a joy to work with you guys.
I was telling somebody the other day. Somebody was asking me, "Hey, what are you going to be doing in the future?" I said, I don't necessarily hate being on camera, but I certainly do love being in the background and watching those things unfold and shaping those narratives and understanding that there's a story to tell here and somebody's got to keep track of that thing.
Yeah, and sending people to hey, go back into Duren's Instagram, pull up that hippie tree planter picture and all that stuff. That's pretty good, man. I was really pleasantly surprised by that. That was very fun.
I'm glad that we found that
good story. Telling the story.
Yeah. I mean that's everything, man. Hunting is. I was just writing. I don't think this will spoil the end of the back 40. We're about a third of the way through, but was just kind of thinking about with Mark and writing the ending for this season, which is going to be the end of the show in its current form, at least. And we were thinking, like, what do we say? What the hell do we say? We've said it all. We've quoted Leopold. We had Doug here. We had all these guys. We had Steve Now they all said all this smart shit. What do we say here? Because there's nothing left maybe to say. And I was just like, man, you know what? At some level, we don't need to say anything. What is hunting? Is working, learning, crafting something, understanding the failures and successes, and then passing it on, and then giving it to someone else.
Mm-hmm.
That's what hunting is. That's what land management is. Much like the T-shirt that you have there. I mean, this is what we're taking part in, this grand macro scheme of learning from a small place and teaching other people so they can carry it on to wherever they go next. And that was a cool thing that we, could end on that note.
That is very cool. Yeah. It's lessons, right? Lessons learned from that sort of thing. And I guess that, mottos, I like mottos. I like, it's not ours, it's just our turn. I like plant trees, grow memories. Maybe I think in bumper stickers or something, but
your Tacoma's got a lot of bumper stickers on it.
Yeah.
I like it.
And wood is good. So that's one from the you take that whatever. But that's from the tree farm people, So yeah, those big ideas, those philosophies. It's really and the big one really is passing it on. It's not ours. It's just our turn. It's really interesting, Ben, being a landowner. My folks have lived to be quite old, both of them in their 90s, and were with us mentally and everything the whole time. And that they just died recently, So here I am, really in my early 60s, and we're trying to, we're moving that forward in the next generation. And I'm already, getting to do that. My nephews are coming to hunt with us. My one nephew wants to bring some of his buddies down. I'm like, and the first thing he said was, and they all want to help out on the farm. It's like, I don't have to say, well, yeah, they can, but I mean, they know it, right? That there's an expectation of it. Not only is there an expectation, they're recognizing the value and the opportunity they're getting.
That's that right there. What you just said is like something those are the things that last within a community of people. This idea of value, that they're not just like, hey, but come down. You mind if I come down and shoot a deer? They're like, hey, I'm going to come down. You mind if I come down and shoot a deer after I work? Like that small addendum to that sentence, can mean everything. Generationally.
And interesting to me also. About the issue that we have here in Southwest Wisconsin, chronic wasting disease, and I'm an advocate of herd control. And we shoot a lot of deer on our farm. We'll shoot, if I have my druthers, we'll probably take 35 deer this year, maybe more. But hopefully we'll have the opportunity. And we have some liberal hunting seasons, not really with guns so much. We have 9 days of buck hunting and doe hunting with gun. And then there's a 4-day antlerless only, and then a holiday hunt with gun. But we're still bow hunting until the end of January here.
Yeah.
So a few years ago, we've got this population, we've got this disease problem, which is driven by population, right? And so when I started getting serious about population control as chronic wasting disease was getting closer and closer, and we've been after population control for other reasons for a while, oak regeneration, balancing with the ecosystem, all of that good, important stuff. But really, you go out there as a hunter and landowner, and then it was like 4 years ago, I shot 7 deer. I mean, I literally was shooting deer because deer needed to be shot, as opposed to I'm going hunting deer and I'm going to take a deer on a hunt, a still hunt, or whatever that happens to be. I was putting myself in a place where I am going to shoot every deer that walks by here. And I don't want to be a deer exterminator. So from a motivation from my standpoint is, so why not share that opportunity, that experience? Why not have 6 other people come in and do that and take one? And so, on a real basic level, that's a contribution some of these folks are making to conservation, is coming in and willing to, I'll shoot a doe. Well,
and for them, that may be the best day of their year, and a thing you might have done by just like boom, 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 up cleaning up the extras here. That might be something that they cherish forever because that's their first deer, or that's their kid's first deer, or how better to kind of pass something on that has meaning than to say, hey, this thing that would be my 17th deer of the season, so I can thin the herd out here. This could be your first ever.
Right, right. And they're going through, then they're processing that animal, and they're going through the process of having it. We require testing of all of our deer, of getting it tested, and what that means, and why from my perspective, from not only from the landowner, but from a conservationist in this area, why we need to remove those deer. It can still be an excellent hunting experience, and all of that. But man, I'd go out and shoot 7 deer in a day, and you got to gut 7 of them out and throw them in and haul them and do all of that. Why not let somebody else have that experience and that joy, and that heartache and everything that goes along with hunting.
The same thing as working your property. If you got to, thin out some pines, and you understand why you're doing that, you don't need to learn that. But if somebody's along and they're learning how to run a chainsaw, they're learning around a pole saw, they're learning about how to thin pine trees out and why that matters for habitat and what you're going to use the limbs for and all that stuff. I mean, that could mean something to something that for you just be another day on the farm,
Yeah.
So that's why I think there's a real foundational element to this shared idea of access and work. It's so fucking American, Doug.
Yeah.
It really is, man. And I love these ideas that, kind of can help signify what our hunting, farming culture really is here. What does it mean to be a part of this shared idea?
Well, and the idea that we can continue some of the stuff that you've been featuring on the Back 40 and the conservation stuff, and the here's why we're doing these particular things on a property. I see that opportunity for content as well, that I hope that we can figure something out in all of this.
We're going to figure something out. I'm going to.
It's the time to be figuring things out. This is
I got plenty of time. I got plenty of time here. I'm not going anywhere.
Locked in your bedroom. I'm real sorry about that.
No, it's I was thinking about it. And the way I thought about it was, it's a chance to be inspired. It's a chance to not take things for granted. It's a chance to really move forward rather than sit around and watch Netflix and woe is me. So
yeah. You listening to any music?
I haven't like jammed out in here, although I should. You and I connect on some Ray Wiley Hubbard. Now, if people out there don't know Ray Wiley Hubbard, get your shit together.
Yes, they need to.
Spend an evening, get a little whiskey. Probably a little Texas whiskey would be helpful. And just sit and listen to Ray Wiley Hubbard. I think you just the whole anthology would be nice to start with. I don't think there's a bad.
Agreed. I was just out working out on the farm. We were cutting pine boughs, and I had my buddy Kiefer, who Steve knows and loves. I refer to Kiefer as the big man, sort of like Springsteen referred to Clarence Clemens as the big man.
The big man,
yeah. And I mean, Kiefer's a big dude, and he's a big dude to me. And I'm not exactly a little fella, so you can imagine how big he is. But he and I were out there, and in my new Can-Am, by the way, and working on this stuff. And because we were just quietly working, we were able to talk and listen to music. And Big Keith got an education on Ray Wiley today. Everything from Snake Farm to Conversation with the Devil and Mother's Blues, where, of course, Ray says one of my favorite things in the world: the days I keep my gratitude higher than my expectations, I have really good days.
I'll tell you, another one my dad introduced me to later on was Delbert McClinton.
Oh, man, yeah.
What did he say? It ain't how you eat, but how you chew it. the wisdom of Americana music.
Yeah.
I think that's the point of Americana music, just wisdom in poetry form.
Oh, and it's so cool being, we had that long evening listening to the jukebox at the Applebee's, and it prompted me to now put together on Spotify a back 40 playlist.
Oh yeah, man! I never really ran with that as far as I meant to.
Well,
we gotta resurrect that son of a bit.
But there was some of the songs that we that we talked about and that we were listening to then, and a lot of most of them have meanings of some sort. And I think Americana music is a great example of it. Great songwriters of yesterday and today. Guy Clark, Townes Van Zandt are a couple of my favorites. John Prine, of course, and the wit and wisdom of that stuff, and and more modern, the guy that I love is Todd Snyder and Hayes Carl. I'd listen to Hayes Carl a lot, and one of his sidemen is a guy named Travis Linville. If you haven't checked out Travis Linville, do that. Just meaningful lyrics. And a guy that I'm just starting to listen to a little bit more now is a fellow named Pony Bradshaw, and I feel like I'm plugging people all of a sudden.
Pony Bradshaw is awesome, dude. Yeah. And actually, there's another guy named Taylor McCall who was on the Meat Eater podcast, and we're using his music to soundtrack Back 40, actually.
People were asking about that last song, Down to the River or whatever it was. The lyrics were when we were food plot planting.
Planting them food plots. Yeah, that wasn't him. That wasn't just like I get tired of us using stock music, and I wish we could afford like Ray Wiley Hubbard tracks for the background music. But this kid Taylor McCall, who's not yet very well known, he's got some. He's not exactly Americana. He's somewhere in the middle, but he's got some good tunes. So we're going to use him for the last 3 episodes of Back 40 and really groove out with him while we're watching Mark try to kill deer.
Yeah. Well, when you need the screaming guitar and just great songs, my buddy Eric Tessmer, he's in Austin. He's from here, but he lives in Austin now, has for 20 years. There's you want to listen to the guitar music. You'll hear a little bit of Stevie Ray Vaughan. You'll hear a little bit of Jimi Hendrix. You'll hear Eric Clapton, and you will hear Eric Tessmer.
That's right.
Just super cool stuff. Music is just such a joy on so many levels.
That's to get into it. Yeah, there's a guy. I don't know if I told you about a guy named Jeffrey Folkalt, who's kind of like a twangy country Americana guy, man. He not a lot of people know about him, but boy, they ought to. I was actually listening to him this morning while I was walking around this room thinking about the four walls. And I'll tell you, we were talking about. I was sitting here thinking about you the other day because my wife came in the first day of my imprisonment.
Well, I'm not sure I know where this is going.
Yeah. And I was like, you know what Doug would say? She said, "How's your vacation going?" And I said, "Well, there's a fine line between prison and vacation."
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, there's a song lyric.
Yeah.
I want to tell Doug about that. But yeah, I mean, last week, like I was telling you about our getting trapped in a blizzard in Montana before I got the COVID. And we told everybody last week on the show about Jolene, the gas station queen, who I met in Roy, Montana.
Is that right?
And she was a walking, talking John Prine song. We were saying that when we were driving away. I said, man, if John Prine was here, he'd have one of the best songs ever written about Jolene, the gas station queen. And so maybe if I can get healthy and come out to the farm, maybe we'll sit down and write a little tune.
There you go.
On Jolene, the gas station queen.
3 chords in the truth, and what is Ray Wiley Hubbard's wisdom? He says, well, you kind of get a progression down, and then after that, you just got to make it rhyme.
It is 3 chords and 3 chords and how many octaves or whatever it is.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Doug, we got a lot of work ahead of us. We got to make a game cooperative for the modern day and drink whiskey and sing songs. So got a lot of shit to do.
All right.
Well, thanks for joining us. This is a shame. It's not the last time. It's a shame it was the first. So we will remedy that later on. We'll talk to you next time, man.
All right. I'm really looking forward to it.
All right, brother. See ya.
Bye-bye.
That's it. That's all. Another episode in the books. Thanks to Doug Duren. Thanks to all the nurses and doctors, here in Bozeman, helping out everybody with COVID, yours included. Thanks to the people who made my house and also put walls around this room so I could be protected and nobody can get my germs. And then thanks to Phil, the engineer, just for being there for all of us, especially Brandon, who he's been playing video games with every single night. That brings me great joy. THC brings people together, then eventually convinces them to join a cult of diversity, inclusion, and open-mindedness. That's THC, the THC cult for you. We haven't heard. You know who we haven't heard from lately, Phil?
Ryan Callahan?
Nope. Guess again.
Okay.
Somebody way cooler.
Oh, well, it's got to be Eric Hall then.
Damn right, Eric Hall.
Oh, okay.
Eric Hall sent us a voicemail. We'll play it for you really quick, and then we'll react.
Ben, Eric here. Yeah, listening to you there, and you was talking about even the show that you're on right now, 95% white male. How do we go about, my question to you is, what is your opinion on how do we go about moving the needle and involving getting more African Americans, white, black, even white women, black men, women, different demographics? How do we go about getting them involved in hunting, urban? Like he's talking about the guy he said he's not supposed to be doing that. The African American is not supposed to be hunting. Not sure who told them they couldn't hunt, but I think the barrier is it's the intimidation factor. We need some more programs maybe to get people involved. And you can't just take people hunting one time and expect them to go on hunting. It's got to be kind of a mentorship. Anyway, my question is, how do we go about moving the needle and getting more people, different demographics involved?
So, Phil, Eric Hall is asking you and I to explain how we think we can take this particular program and the hunting community at all to a more diverse place, since we're 90+% white dudes, most of them with beards. A lot of them now play video games. We've talked about this before. We'll continue to talk about this. Phil, I'll let you answer Eric in the best way that you can. I have my own kind of way I want to approach this for the moment.
No, I'm still an outsider. I just like from an outsider's perspective. I think just like normalizing diversity. Less raised eyebrows when a person of color or a woman or someone queer is out hunting. Just be more inviting, warmer. Bring them into this. You've got a voice here, and it's nice to have people on the show and let them share your voice for a little bit.
Yeah, we're definitely going to do that, man. And I was thinking about it a lot, like thinking about maybe some of my own shortcomings, being a little pig-headed sometimes about things. Man, if hunting itself was a place, like it was a town and we all lived in it, it would be a kind of a fucked up town. Like, let's just be honest, man. If there was like 11 million of us living in a town, it would be 94% white dudes in that town.
Yikes.
Or at least if we all ever moved to a commune for the cult that we've created here, we might all look around and be like, damn, son, we got problems. We're going to have a problem procreating, among other things. And our culture is going to be stagnant and stale and full of the same old crap. And is that a place that I want to be? I don't want to be there. And it's not because I'm woke. It's not because I have any other agenda other than the place I want to be is going to be more richer for welcoming different kinds of people, no matter where they come from. And, we're in a position where we are where we are. We're at a very undiverse place. It's not diverse around these parts. And so we have to actively make it so. And then once we do, we have to celebrate that. And then we have to, have a vision for where we want to be. And so that's what got me thinking, man. I was thinking, like, what if the hunting collective or the hunting community was like a place, it would really feel stale. It would feel like we've been doing this for a long time, and there's some different ways that we can make it better. And so we're going to do that. I'm in the process now of reaching out to some folks who I think can help us with that, who I think can talk us through what that future might look like, and just on a real level, not on a level where I'm trying to, make everyone feel like it's diverse or make everyone feel a certain way. I'm not trying to trick you. I'm not on MSNBC. I'm not trying to trick you into feeling a certain way about diversity. I honestly feel that our place, the place we are in now, will be made better with those people along for the ride. And we got to do whatever we can to make that happen. Set aside your political bullshit and just do it, because it's the right thing to do. And I think the history will shine pretty happily upon us for making these efforts. So we're going to line some things up where we can talk to some females, we can talk to some LGBTQ folks, we can talk to people that have a perspective on this and have thought it through, and they can add to the conversation. And once we get them in the door, we're going to do our best to keep them here and make them feel cool, make them feel welcome, make them feel like they should be here. So that's the end of my rant. So if you want to listen to that, keep listening to THC. Say bye, Phil.
Goodbye.
Peace.
Too long, 'cause I can't go a week without doing wrong. Oh, without doing wrong. Without doing wrong. Oh, without doing wrong. Drinking in heaven.
Hey everybody, listen up. I got mega huge news. Meat Eater Live is heading back out on the road. That's right. Join me and the crew. Clay Newcomb, Cal, Yanni, Spencer's going to be there. Phil the engineer's going to be there. Meat Eater Live headed back out. Now, when you get every ticket, okay? Every ticket you buy, you get a signed copy of our new Meat Eater Outdoor Cookbook. This tour is celebrating the release of the book. Buy a ticket, get a signed copy, Meat Eater Outdoor Cookbook, wild game recipes for the grill, smoker, camp stove, and campfire, which I'll point out is a $38 value. Here's where we're going to go. April 23rd, the Mesa Arts Center in Mesa, Arizona. April 24, the Balboa Theater in San Diego. April 25, the Grove in Anaheim, California. April 27, the Crest Theater in Sacramento. April 29, the Union in Salt Lake City. April 30, the Egyptian in Boise. May 1, the Wilma Theater in Missoula. May 2, the Bing Crosby Theater in Spokane, Washington. May 4, Revolution Hall in Portland, Oregon. And May 5, the last day of the tour, Pantages Theater in Tacoma, Washington. For tickets and more information, visit the events page at themeateater.com. Hope to see you at the show.